Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm glad we're all excited coming up a long weekend.
No, I think we're just excited to be here.
Oh, that too. We are
And
excited
in
to be
this
here.
room.
Thank you. And in this room, yes.
Yes.
Allison, for you, just for you. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. The time is 6:33, and I'd like to call the District 204 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Marilyn, will you please call the roll?
Member Aubert?
Here.
Member Vita Daniels?
Here.
Member Dillon?
Here.
Member Gretsch?
Here.
Member Kelly?
Here.
Member Swinehart?
Here.
Member Thomas?
Here.
Great, thank you. First up tonight, do we have, Marilyn, any agenda-related comments?
We do.
Okay, great, thank you. And just as a reminder, before we begin and call our first speaker, I'd just like to say thank you again for joining us. There are 2 opportunities for audience members to address the Board of Education. Agenda-related comments are welcome at the beginning, and non-agenda-related comments are welcome before we adjourn. We appreciate community participation, and please understand that per board policy, we cannot engage in dialogue or discussion. If there is a specific question or comment that requires follow-up, the appropriate administrator will respond at a later time. And lastly, pursuant to Board Policies 2, 230, and 830, individuals addressing the board are expected to conduct themselves with respect and civility. And in the interest of time, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you for cooperating with us to make this evening's meeting efficient and productive. Marilyn, would you call our first speaker?
Willa Schultz.
Hi,
Hi.
this is my first board meeting, so I'm excited to be here. My name is Willa Schultz, and just a little bit about me. So I'm a longtime resident of 204, 102, graduated from Costa School and LT. All 4 of my kids went to LT. I have a grandson now who's at LT. I also taught here for a while as a substitute, and I'm a longtime educator, retired now. After, well, the last 22 years of my career, I was at the Illinois Math and Science Academy. So, I am here to, first of all, thank you for all your hard work and your dedication. I spent several days reading through all of last year's minutes just to catch up, and I'm totally impressed with your hard work and your dedication, so thank you. I'm also very appreciative of the ongoing work that you're doing with your strategic plan. I find it to be commendable, and thank you again for that. And the last thing, I'm here to say I'm very, very pleased about the equity, inclusion, and belonging work that you're doing across the board with your students, with your staff, training, everything. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes our agenda-related, public agenda-related comments tonight. Thanks, Marilyn. Thank you for coming. We can move on. First up, we have policy. There's one agenda-related item to policy, and that is a second reading for policies 7240 and 7180. Dr. Waterman.
Okay, thank you, President Dillon. So yeah, the board talked about this at the August meetings as a first reading. We're making the recommendation based upon some work that was done in the spring and early summer. Board looked at policy 7240, 7180, 720, and 7190. There were no changes or revisions recommended for 720 or 7190, but as a second reading, we're recommending the changes that we talked about in August for policy 7-180 and 7240. 7180 is prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment. Updating the policy so that the restorative measures definition currently would align with the language in Public Act 102-241. And then also that second bullet point, just making the recommendation again to add additional flexibility for our district around bullying prevention and response plan. And then 7240, conduct code for participants in extracurricular activities. I recommend that policy be updated as well to expand prohibited conduct in the code of conduct to also include violations of board policy, hazing, harassment, discrimination, and bullying. So this would come back to the board next week, actually, as 2 separate agenda items, one for each policy. And we'll ask the board to consider adopting both of these policies, again, as a second reading 2 weeks from now, September 19th. Happy to take any questions.
No questions, but thanks to Carrie and Jill and Brian and Ed and whoever else, like I said, on the committees to to, and our legal team to bring these two policies forward and in line with what we're doing, so thank you.
So, I mean, just a quick question regarding the code of conduct for the extracurricular activities. So I know that all sports activities and other extracurricular activities have already started. So as part of that, have the coaches or sponsors read or provided the past policy or the current policy to all students? And if they have, will a revision be communicated to them once this is approved?
So-
Like, what will be communicated to them?
Jen, can you talk about that?
Sure. We, there were some updates based on the policy recommendation to the student handbook as well. So when we made a video that we shared with students and families as well, we included some of that new language as well. When fall sport athletes did sign off, they signed off, though, on the previous documentation, previous policy and handbook language. So we will be sharing an update through athletics and activities once everything is final. But we have started communicating the new language, especially the clause about social media conduct becoming of a D230 representative, including off-site, off-campus. I don't have the language in front of me, but and on social media. So we have to make sure that we continue communicating that information as well.
So
And we
will
can
they
add
have
that
to-
we can add that's an updated board policy that was obviously not updated now, but in September.
So will they have to then sign off on it again? Or,
I think that's an answer we'll want to get from our legal on. I can do that. So I'll get information and let the board know about that.
So you're asking what is,
Like if they signed off on the code of conduct that doesn't have this language included,
can we make them sign off again?
can we make them sign off again? I'll get an answer to that.
I would say why couldn't, because it's.
Yeah.
An update.
Yeah,
I feel like you could.
yep. It's a great
That's
question.
something they do through
Yeah.
Infinite Campus.
Yep.
Is that how they?
They did it the first week of school.
They actually, so there are two things. We're having all of our students sign off on their review of the handbook through an Infinite Campus survey. That's still ongoing. But our fall athletes, they completed, and families completed a Google form with, prior to participating in athletics. So that's something that we'd have to look at.
This gives us a couple weeks to talk to forensic and say what's the best approach for having them sign off on it again. How do we do that? So that's a great
right,
question.
I mean, because I would hate to have, if there was some
Something
incident that
happened and-
happened, and
yep.
then people can go back and say, well, that wasn't what I signed off on after you've approved it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yep, great question.
Thanks, Michael.
So this will come up on Monday then?
Yeah, this would come back for consideration at the September 19th meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? Thanks. Okay. We can now move on to finance. We'll begin with the fiscal year '23 final budget presentation. Brian Stashak.
Thank you, President Dillon. So, the good news is that since we last looked at the budget, I've actually reduced some of the expense by about $128,000. Reason for that is it's the net effect of reducing some of the originally anticipated expense in transportation. As you may recall, back in August when we, is that August? Yes, August when we talked about it, we still hadn't really settled the contract with First Student. And I had mentioned to this group that they were originally looking for about a 50% increase. As it turns out, with some of the things that they went back and did, we're about 13 to 15% higher than what we otherwise would be, which certainly is still high, but is reasonable, I think, based on what they're facing in the labor market with those kinds of issues. And so I had removed roughly $225,000 of expense from the transportation fund. And then we had to add in a couple of other items that have come up since then as well, for a total of $96,500 there. And so, like I said, that net effect is $128,500 reduction in expense. I'm not going to take you through everything here on the budget again. Ultimately, like I said, the expected deficit is like $3.6 million, so we're down, that $128,000. There's still a couple of unknowns that I'm dealing with. First of all, and none of you in here have yet received your property tax bills for the second installment. and we have not received actual copies of what the final levy looks like yet. So with that being the case, I have an estimate of what our property taxes will be in the budget, and I think I'm pretty close. The only unknown number is what will be attributable to new property, the new property value. And so that number, you know, it may sway the levy by $100,000 or $200,000 potentially, but it's not going to be enough to concern us that, you know, we would have to probably go back and amend the budget. I think we're pretty close with what that is. The other number that I'm still deciding on is the corporate personal property replacement tax number. So you recall our conversations how historically, up until 2021, the fiscal year 20, we typically the district would see about $3.5 million, $3.5 million a year from that revenue source. In 21, we received, I think it was 4.8 million, and in 22, like $9.8 million. So we're really in some outlier territory here. Interestingly enough, a couple of weeks ago, the estimates from the Illinois Department of Revenue came out, and they were estimating us at $10.5 million for this coming year. The trouble with that estimate is that if in the second half of the fiscal year we see a downturn in the economy, those numbers are going to change on us. So I think they do their best to estimate based on what they know right now, kind of like the 5-year forecast that I present here, and a lot of it can change, you know, as we go through the year. So as you recall, I have about $7.8 million in the current budget, which would put us almost $3 million less than what the Department of Revenue is anticipating. What I can tell you about the Department of Revenue estimates is last year, I think they said for us about $5.5 million, if I remember correctly, and we ended up at 9.8. So hopefully we trend on the high side of those estimates, and that would be great. There's really no way to tell because those taxes are paid on a monthly basis, and so we're paid on a monthly basis. So we won't even know what that final number looks like until, the total aggregate number looks like until June of 2023. So it's not as though we receive one lump sum payment at some point. The payments continue to come through on a monthly basis. So all we can do is kind of watch that and see where it goes. I'm tempted to raise the number a little bit, but I'm still talking with my colleagues. A lot of my colleagues are still, in other districts, are still saying they're going with the 75 to 80% of what we had last year, just in the event that there is perhaps a downturn somewhere in the economy, and we start to see a little bit less from that revenue source, because it truly is based on that economy. And so, other than that, other than those changes, there is one other change that I think I am going to make, and that is that for the final budget, again, I wanted to see where those final revenue numbers were, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all of the expense from our capital projects for what we're continuing to pay from this past summer, and in the next summer, I think I'm going to move all of that over to the capital projects fund. And the reason to do that, it does not lower the expense, none of that changes. But the reason to do that, really, there's two reasons. Number one, you can track those separately in that fund, and it has no other activity in it. You're just simply paying for those invoices out of that fund. There's no other expense activity in that fund. Secondly, what it does is when the state form calculates if you have a deficit, what it ultimately does is it includes the education fund, O&M fund, transportation fund, working cash fund, right? So if we move that expense out of there and we move fund balance over there to cover those expenses, then ultimately what happens is that it does not appear as a deficit on our budget. So you still will spend down, you know, the $3.6 million in reserves. That's going to happen. But it simply does not then show that deficit plan, you know, because those other funds, the 60 fund, which is the capital projects fund, is not included in there. So I'm probably going to do that at the September meeting, 2 weeks from tonight, or no, I'm sorry, 2 weeks from Monday, yesterday. Then what we'll have to do is there will be a separate resolution by the board to make that transfer, not of the expense, but of the essentially the revenue source, which would be those fund balances to move over into that fund. So that would be the only other change that I think I'm going to make to what we have here right now. Unless, of course, as I look through it over the next week, or somehow I forgot something, or I'm seeing something that I missed, which at this point generally won't happen. On a side note to this, I think I mentioned this to the board at the August meeting, with those delayed property taxes. This has nothing to do with the budget, but as we're talking about the delayed property taxes, one of the other resolutions we'll probably see in October is asking the board to allow us to transfer money from the working cash fund temporarily over to the bond and interest fund and potentially transportation and the IMRF Social Security Fund. And the reason for that is exactly because of those delayed property taxes. So we know right now the bond and interest fund does not have enough money. We have enough cash, let me be clear on this. We have enough cash to cover all of the expenses. That's not the issue. On the ledger accounts, we have to have enough cash in that account, the bond and interest account, to actually pay the principal and interest due on December 15th. And so we may start, actually, right now I'm hearing that the tax bills will go out December 1st and they'll be due January 1st. So typically when that happens, we do start to take in some collections fairly quickly after that. I don't know if we'll have enough to cover the bond and interest fund for sure at that particular point. So again, we'll probably be asking the board, this would be in October, to allow us that temporary transfer. And then once we see those tax collections come in, we'll be moving that money back into the working cash fund. Again, that's a side note to all of this, but just kind of a preview of what may be coming as it relates to those property taxes being delayed. So other than that, again, I've given you all of that similar information to what we had before. I changed it around a little bit. Like I said, that potential deficit is down a little bit, around $3.6 million. And again, this will be the adoption of the final budget, so we will have a budget hearing on the regular September meeting, and then we will adopt the final budget. We always have the option in the future to amend the budget if necessary, if something really changes here dramatically, and we just go through the same process. We publish a tentative budget, have the board adopt a tentative, and then we go to a final at least 30 days later. So, but I generally haven't done that unless something dramatic changes. And so I think once we really lock this in here for September, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Brian, what is the downside of you going to 75% of that 7.75 million? Is there a downside to being low? Is there
No, I think
better upside to?
no, there really isn't, other than the fact that I would, ultimately have to, go back and look at our auditors and then obviously the board and say, yeah, we way over budgeted here and we missed our revenue. So I think what you're asking, correct me if I'm wrong, is why wouldn't we go to the $10.5 million? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or I'm curious why are you worried about, if we did the 7.75,
Yep.
then we're just happy and we're hopefully really content when we see it in June, you said, or?
Yes.
Comes out?
Yeah, right. That would be the case. So, again, it simply is a matter of, we're probably being a little more conservative on that number right now. And then, again, if I budgeted that number, I may have to answer questions to the auditors later on, saying, why did you budget so much? Those types of things. And so, we're trying to be realistic here, but unfortunately, the problem is, these numbers have been real outliers the last 2 years compared to what we normally see. And so, again, amongst my colleagues in other districts, that's where we've kind of landed on that, 75 to 80% for the prior year number, and then kind of going forward. I don't know what this is going to look like going forward. I really don't. I wish I had a good answer.
And I mean, I don't see a problem with going on the conservative side, because then we're just happy
That's right.
later.
That's right. Yeah,
As long
ultimately.
as- Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, what I was going to say is ultimately, let's say we take another $3 million, right? Well, then maybe our deficit's only $600,000 when it's all said and done. And that's really just what happens.
Okay, so that was my next question. So, on this year's budget, it will have a deficit of the 3.6.
Right.
But when we find out June 23, that, let's say it does come in at 10 million.
Right?
How does that go on the books then for that deficit from this year's budget? Will it be amended,
No, so
or
the,
will it just carry over?
right, so what will end up happening is, whatever the budget will remain as the budget. Then, when we publish our financial statements, the financial statements will have the full final result of what happened. So that's when we will know, and we'll have an idea, obviously, when our auditors come in next September. But that's when we simply publish the final information and say, look, here's what we budgeted, here's the actual, and so here's what it looks like. So in the case of what we have here, as I said, a $3.6 million deficit. If we pick up $3 million more dollars, and that's assuming we spend everything in this budget and all other revenue sources, nothing else changes, then we would have a $641,000 deficit for that year. And that's what would be reported then in the financial statements.
Okay.
So it's that budget to actual, and that's really, like I said, the actual, once we cross that June 30 threshold, it's the actual that really matters at that point.
What was our budget to actual last year? Do you know?
Well, I don't yet, so here's what's happening. Because we work on modified accrual, our books are open through August. So essentially, even though we ended the June 30 year on June 30th, 2022, 2022, what we had do is we still had our books open until just last week. So now we will be working on all of that information. Our auditors will actually be in next week. And so we'll start working on the budget to the actual numbers within, again, we'll start working on that with the auditors next week. We should have probably a draft of the financials probably end of October, beginning of November. So we'll have that information for the board forthcoming.
And do you know what the budget was?
Total?
Yeah, the final.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay, no big
I can go
deal.
back and look.
No big
But
deal.
yeah, we do,
I'll find out
but
later.
I can tell you this, I am anticipating a surplus from last year at this particular point. How much that is, I don't know, because we had on the expense side, we had quite a few large accruals due to the summer construction this year. So numbers that were coming in that we were paying, for example, they were through the period of June 30th, meaning that work was done through June 30th, but we did not receive those invoices until July. So then we're paying those, and then we're actually charging those back to this past year, because that's really when the work was done and that's where they belong. So once we finish going through all that, and Kathy Moran is there, she can tell you all about it. She's the one who does the majority of that work for us. And so we'll go back and look at all of that, move everything in as far as the appropriate expense and revenue into that year, based on the fact that it actually occurred in that year, and then we'll come out with a number. So when I first look at everything for the actuals, it's on a cash basis only. And so you get an idea of what it looks like, but the end result may be, fairly different based on how much you have out there in your accruals, both on the revenue and expense side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Sticking with the theme of the CPPT.
CPPRT, Corporate Personal Property Replacement Tax.
I missed the R. Okay, sorry.
That's good.
So you were describing kind of a long-standing kind of flat-ish, low-growth trend. 3.5 million kind of on average long ago, and a little uptick in 21, 4.8 million, and then jumping to 9.8 when I think it's the state had told you to expect in the 2022 year where we hit 9.8 or received 9.8, which I think comes in monthly from what I recall you saying.
For the most part, yes.
Versus the 5.5 they estimated. Do they have, I mean, I could see you maybe don't want to go back to the state and say, hey, could you help me understand the difference, and don't want to open up an opportunity for them to think about it harder, I guess, or,
Yeah.
But is there any kind of high-level explanation? Is this just post-COVID recovery and folks are out
Yeah.
there spending, and like, how could their estimates, I don't want to put you in a weird spot with this question, but is there anything that comes to light, or is it kind of just an unknown at this time?
It is mostly an unknown.
Yeah, okay.
It is based on economy, and again, it's a corporate tax. So any company that's listed as a corporation, right, they pay this based on really how well their business is performing. I will tell you this. We had somebody in the circle of business managers email the state, I'm sorry, the Department of Revenue. I was going to say the State Board of Education, not the State Board of Education. It was the only Department of Revenue. And we received a response back because they kind of said, look, we're very thankful all of this is happening and we appreciate the additional dollars, but can you kind of tell us what's going on here? And we received an answer that was kind of like, well, you know, the least somebody can pay is zero. And right now, people are all paying more than zero, and so that's kind of what the answer was. And we're like, okay. It didn't really help us fully understand. And I don't even know if they, obviously, like I said, I think they put that estimate together. But there is some forecasting involved in that, even for them, right? To say 9 months from now, this is what the economy is going to look like, right? And nobody truly knows that.
Okay,
And
fair.
so I think
Sounds like our experience is not an outlier, it's not unusual compared to some of your peers that you've spoken with, so that gives me comfort. There's
yes,
nothing-
what I can tell you is that every district that receives corporate personal property replacement taxes, and I think that's pretty much all of them, they're in the same boat with us. Now, some of them receive different dollar amounts, total dollar amounts, but percentage-wise, we are all up
Okay,
in that same area.
okay. And now the state has provided an estimate that's much higher, or higher even than last year's actuals, and certainly much higher than their estimate. And one might say, well, they'll be low again. Let's go up to something ridiculous. But I appreciate the conservatism and the pragmatic approach, knowing that this recent trend has been volatile. Yes, it's moving in one direction, but I don't have a reason to think it will continue to. So budgeting appropriately, a little conservatively on this topic, still having a deficit, to your question, Allison, I think makes sense. And if it's a little better, then it's good news. And I don't think that would influence, I think the only risk in budgeting too low for anybody who's doing budgeting is that they haven't, allowed for enough investment or expenditure. And I don't hear that there's that concern. I mean, we've got the right amount of capital projects. Everything else feels appropriate from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and I can comment on the investment side of that. The investments are done really based on the cash that we have available. So even though the budget may reflect, $3 million less than perhaps what the state says, and maybe that's what happens or maybe that's not what happens, we will continue to invest based on the available cash. So if we do take in that additional $3 million over the course of the year, we will continue to invest that. And then ultimately, our interest earnings will simply be better than what we budgeted as well.
Yeah, okay. And just one other question. Can you, I'm trying to make sure I'm comprehending the use of the capital projects fund.
Yeah.
Historically, have we ever used
Yes.
that fund for, is it only when there's I don't know. How is it, and is there diversity in practice in terms of how districts show capital outlay, whether it's within some of these other funds or whether it's in a capital projects fund? Is it
So, sure. So there's two funds you would use. You would either use your O&M fund, operations and maintenance, to pay for those expenses, or the capital projects fund.
Okay,
And so it's just those two. It's kind of all over the board on how districts, pay for those projects. Typically, when we've had smaller projects in the $2 million range, we've simply continued to pay for them out of the O&M fund.
okay.
We did use it. I used it one time here before, and that was in 2016 and 17, I think, because we were looking at deficit spending for projects at the time. And so to kind of, again, same purpose, same reasons, we used it then. And so that would be the same reasoning as, behind why we would use it now.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And Brian, by doing that, does that have any impact, or maybe none at all, on like our credit rating and things like that?
Not at all.
Okay.
No. Ultimately, one of the biggest factors in the credit rating is going to be, do you still have appropriate reserves?
Okay.
That's what they're going to look at. And so even though we're spending down, let's say in this case we spent, let's call it $4 million, right? Ultimately, what we can point to is if there was a question from a rating agency, what we would point to and say, look, these are for one-time capital project expenditures. They get much more concerned when they see a deficit in your operating expense because you're trying to pay salaries and benefits. That's where you start to run into some issues where they say, wait a minute, you have a problem here. So we would not have that issue. We would simply point to the fact that, look, these are for one-time expenses for capital projects. And so that's it. It's not our operating expenses.
Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate that. That's good. Anybody else? Awesome. That sounds good. So we'll see this for final adoption on Monday?
That's right, on Monday, the 19th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Okay, great. We're going to stick with you again, Brian. The next item under finance is the TRS supplemental savings plan.
Yes, thank you, President Dillon. Okay, so I'll try to be brief as possible on this. Let me start off by saying we don't have a choice. So there's no option here.
Great opener. Going strong.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Set the table for us.
Yeah. We don't have a choice. It's public law. It's law in the state of Illinois. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I will tell you in August of 2021, legislation was passed that said that the teacher retirement system in the state of Illinois, or TRS for short, right? That's the pension system for the certified staff members. The legislation required TRS to set up a supplemental savings plan, and that supplemental savings plan was to take the form of a 457 retirement plan, okay? And so for those of you who, if you look at a 457 would be similar to a 403B, okay, or a 401K. However, in this particular case, the employers typically are not making contributions to those because the district's already made contributions for TRS to TRS itself. So this is supplemental to anything that's involved in the pension system. And so they came to us shortly after that was passed, and they said, look, by the way, you have to pass this. You're required to do so. Many of us had concerns about how this was going to operate. Reason being really kind of two things. Number one, many districts already, we have a 403B plan in place and a 457 plan in place. You say, why two of them? Well, the 403B has a current cap of $20,500 annually. And if you have a 457 plan, you can have another $20,500. So really, you can, for somebody here in the district, you could actually put an additional $41,000 away for retirement savings if that's what you wanted to do. So it just gives you that additional, space to save. So we already have those in place. And as I just mentioned, one of our other major concerns is the fact that there is a cap in place. It doesn't matter if you have a 457 plan with your employer. It doesn't matter how many employers you work for. You don't have a cap of $20,500 with each employer. You have a total cap in your 457 plan of $20,500 for that calendar year. And so we had expressed these concerns, to our lawyers. Pretty much every other district had expressed these concerns as well. And so at first TRS was reluctant, but then they did come back and listen to the law firms. They did give us some, I guess, I don't know what the right word is, but they agreed to kind of negotiate some of the issues here. And really what they did is they said that, okay, fine, the school district, and I have those kind of bulleted out here, school district responsibilities are ministerial and not fiduciary, which you never want to be fiduciary because at that particular point what ends up happening is you can be held responsible for the investment of vehicles. We don't want any part of that, right? You choose your own investment vehicles, that's not for us. We don't even do that in our own plans. We pass it off and allow people to do what they want to do. Second, employees do not have the right to make the claims against the district with respect to the election of fund sponsors or investment options. That kind of goes along again with number one. And then thirdly, this one was kind of what I had talked about as well. Remove the school districts from the responsibility of the contribution limit monitoring for employees who failed to report in a timely manner contributions of other employees 457. So, to give you an example, if you were a substitute teacher working in multiple districts, you potentially could open up, a 457 plan with them and, in a different district. And so really what that does is kind of relieves us of some of that responsibility because I wouldn't know what somebody's contributing to another plan in another location. Let's say they were a long-term employee there, who knows? And so ultimately, with these changes in place, our lawyers then said, okay, we feel comfortable with these. And so districts, you can now go ahead and adopt this resolution to participate in this particular plan. We're still going to have, ultimately what the plan does is it automatically enrolls people coming up. And so we're going to have to monitor that with our new staff members and, let them know have to participate, however, it's going to automatically enroll you. There's other things that are coming along with this, but we'll monitor those and make sure that they're aware of them. So, and again, everything I just said, we have no choice in any of that matter. It's all TRS telling us this is what you have to do. And so at this point, having the lawyers giving us the okay, that's what we're going to go ahead and do. I don't know how many people would actually participate in this with TRS versus our own 457 plan, because again, we have one in place as well, or our 403B plan. So we'll, like I said, have to pass the resolution and then move forward and see who wants to participate.
There
So
must,
then they could participate in all, our 403B, 457B, and then TRSs also?
You can only be in one.
Oh, got it.
So, yeah, so you'll have to pick. If you want to, if you could be in our 403B program here, and then if you pick a 457, you're either going to have to pick LT's 457 or
The
TRS 457.
although if they're new hires, they'll be automatically enrolled in the TRS one.
That's-
That they have to unenroll from that if they choose to go.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
It's a little more legwork.
Yes.
I'm assuming would something like this have happened because there were districts that didn't support, like it started as a certain smaller, I'm saying smaller, I don't know, other districts that maybe didn't have something like this in place for their teachers?
You know, I think potentially that's part of it. And I also think this was, you know, an attempt by the legislature to kind of say, look, there are other options out there other than just your regular pension system,
Okay.
right? And so here's one in TRS, you're required to offer it, so they moved forward, and now they're obviously pushing it out to us. So we do have to adopt this resolution allowing, you know, District 204 to participate in it. And again, we don't have a choice. Right now, TRS has said the deadline to submit the paperwork with the approval is September 30th. So that's why we're doing it this month. And again, we just recently received this from our lawyers as well to say, go ahead and move forward.
So we'll be reading this out loud?
No.
That's not necessary, okay.
No, I'll just put the
I don't have to hear
recommendation
you,
down
hear
there.
me.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna read the full resolution, but
Okay.
we'll have the resolution there, and then I have the recommendation there on page 45 of what it should say.
Appreciate that. Anybody else? Thank you. Okay, awesome, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Next up, we have curriculum, 3 agenda items to review. The first is the 2023-24 school year calendar. First reading, Scott Egerny.
Before Scott starts, I want to just jump in real quick and remind the board, like, this is the first time of the year that we share the calendar. This is the time of the year that we always share the calendar for the first time. It also begins the feedback loop that you're going to see over the next 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Even since last Wednesday, we shared the original memo with the board. We shared it with our staff. We've begun to share it with the LTA, with our administrative team. So we're already starting to get some, hey, what about this and what about that? And so you'll see in front of you, you've got, we're kind of thinking about 2 different versions that Scott's going to walk through here in a second. And it really, it's dependent upon the date we want to start, and there's some advantages, disadvantages that Scott's going to go through. But I just wanted to briefly say this is our goal every year. Get this out. Our goal this week is to post this on our website, post both versions, and let the community for the next few weeks weigh in. We're meeting with the LTA next Wednesday to get their thoughts, but purpose of tonight is also to get the board's thoughts on this as a first reading before it comes back in another month for the second reading. So just wanted to lay the groundwork on that. So take it away, Scott. Sure.
So the original calendar in your packet was an August 21st start, and we shared that obviously with you, the board, as well as the faculty association and our administrative team. We'll begin with that calendar. That should be the first one. There's obviously the one in your packet, and then the update at your table. You'll notice the 21st is a Monday. That's similar to this year, where we had our staff coming back the week before with the Freshman Experience Day on a Friday, and then the start of school on Monday, the 21st of August. As far as the way that calendar leads through the first semester, it ends on the 22nd of December. We then have a full 2 weeks and 3 weekends of a break through January 8th, being an Institute Day, starting second semester January 9th. And that travels all the way through to the end of the year with final exams the week after Memorial Day, again, by starting a little later, 21st. We were finishing up those exams after Memorial Day, which is actually how exams have pretty much run most of the last 20-some-odd years. There's just been a few years it's been before. It's just, they've been more recent, and so that's in people's minds. With the last day for students on the 30th, graduation on the 29th. So that's really the gist of that first calendar. Some little nuances we can certainly talk about with the spring break. There was an error in what was in your packet, which is corrected by the big blue box. Good Friday is the 29th of March, not the 19th of April. So we had the wrong year there. So when that has happened in the past, that Easter is during spring break, we add the Easter Monday as the holiday off for that. So that's why you see the first off there. Other little nuances, we've been told by ISB that the state test, the SAT, will be an online test going forward, starting next year, which presents some interesting challenges. When we've been doing the SAT 9 and SAT 10, we've been able to give one of those tests, the SAT 10, in gymnasiums in larger settings, but needing Chromebooks, needing power sources, needing to plug in, there's no way we can do that. So we're going to have to do sophomores on one day and freshmen on another. At North, we'll do the juniors on one day, and that gives time for the extended time testing on that second day. So we've got that sort of built in on that 10th and 11th of April. Other little things, there's always little nuances. There is a leap year, so that always throws a wrench into things. And, whenever you start.
No election day.
No election day, holiday.
Sure.
So, you start adding things up, and you just have to make sure that it all adds up. So we shared this calendar with our administrative team, and the question was asked, hey, 2 years ago, we had kids come for the Thursday and Friday, so Institute Day being on Monday the 14th, students coming on the 17th and 18th. And that was really good time to sort of ease into the year, do some social emotional learning, some, going over expectations, getting all that sort of stuff out of the way, and then you start on the 21st with teaching and learning, right then and there. So that's where the second calendar comes into play. So the one that's at your table that has 8/17 as the draft up at the top, you'll notice that has the first day of school as being the 17th of August. Pushes other things a little earlier, including book pickup and the Opening Institute and Freshman Experience Day and whatnot. But what we wanted to do, you can do a bunch of things now, but we've just added 2 extra days to first semester. And we like that because they've been about 8 to 10 to 11 days in balance, depending on the year. So this would give us 84 days instead of 82 days in the first semester, which means we have to take away 2 days from second semester. And this is where we're going to get a lot of input, right? Right now, as you see on this calendar, we just added them to the winter break. Other people might want a break in April. There's no days off from April 2nd to Memorial Day. Some people might like a break there. We sometimes have had a break in March, a day off in March for an Institute Day. That's not built in. Again, that's partly due to the leap year day, but again, you'll have to trust me on that one. We can go through all the details if you'd like. But ultimately, there could be an opportunity to have another day off in March. So those are some of the lengthier discussions. As you see it now, we've added those extra 2 days to winter break, which has students coming back after winter break on January 11th. But these changes don't change the last week. They don't change graduation. They don't change the final exams. Everything happens after Memorial Day. Because if we just cut 2 days off at the end, we'd have final exams on some before Memorial Day, some after. And we didn't feel that was a real good way to go.
Yeah. Just to be specific, it would be 2 days of final exams heading into Memorial Day weekend, and the last day of finals would be the Tuesday after Memorial Day. So there's no way kids would, that would be.
We have a lot of
tough.
people who won't want to come back for that third day.
And so which schedule is that?
So that, we didn't put that in there.
That's not.
No, we didn't.
Not
put
an
that in
option, no.
So I would just highlight too, like version 1 of, that you see on your hard copy is, there's a 12-day difference between first semester and second semester. And the second version 2, there's an 8-day difference, so it balance. We're always off balance a little bit, but 8 days.
You do have those test days in second semester and a couple of, we'll have a day where we have to do an Illinois science assessment, and there's always some things that kind of make it seem not so wide, but this does balance it more than it normally does.
One of the questions I had when I was looking through this and trying to pair up last year's and last year, to your point of this is just the start of it and we're going to see this 12 more times. It was hard to remember last year because of all those times that we had to revisit it. But we did pull an Institute Day in March because of the election day. Whereas there would have been 4 Institute days, there's 3 this year because of that election day. But in these calendars, I'm still only seeing 3 as well, so.
That's partly due to that leap year day, and partly due to, because that's an extra work day. So leap year is an extra work day, an extra student day, and so we took back that extra day. if
That,
makes
I will
sense.
say, that would be an option. So like in version 2, currently, we've essentially added 2 days to winter break. We could make winter break 2 days shorter, which would still be a 2-week, 3-weekend winter break and have Institute Day.
No, we wouldn't have an Institute Day, because the teachers would have one too many days in their
That's
contract.
right, we
So
wouldn't.
we have a contractual, and you see that too, 183 faculty workdays. So that leap year day is 183
I got you.
instead of Institute Day.
Yep.
Yeah, because,
But
so
it
we'd have to
doesn't
add those
affect the
2 days
student
back
days.
in for both staff and
Exactly.
students, right?
Right.
So it's really, do we want a longer winter break, or do we want a normal winter break and build those 2 days into second semester if we go with version 2?
I like that. I think that's a super long winter break.
Yeah, and just build in a 3-day weekend in April or a 3-day weekend.
Yeah, seeing that there's no way to finish everything before Memorial Day weekend, which has
Right.
been achieved in some years. But my goodness,
Yeah.
my voice is just one, and there are many. That this gets put out there for the community to respond to.
in this room,
No.
right?
And that's, our standard winter break has been 2 weeks, 3 weekends.
I would just like say, I agree with you, like, that's too long, and I would question, if you only have 2 days before there's another holiday,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
off?
that's true.
Would you even bring your kids, if you were looking at
You might,
cheaper
you might extend it,
vacations?
yeah.
You're in January.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you might
Oh.
not wanna go away over New Year's, you might wanna hit like the second week in
Right.
January. It's only 2 days your kids would miss from school, and you could still tie in that other weekend, like, it might not encourage them all to come for those 2 days.
But 3-week winter break.
Right,
Yeah,
but I mean, if
they
you
would make it
look
into
at
a 2 days
times go way over
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
over Christmas and New Year's, but then you're like, I got a found week in the middle,
it's
like
cheaper, it's probably cheaper too.
significant.
Airfares and all
Right, so you know what I mean, and you're only talking, they're here for 2 days.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think generally
Good point.
people benefit from knowing that there's some familiarity and repetition, that winter break's generally 2 weeks, spring break's generally 1, and I feel like for many people, that extra day off, I don't want to say randomly, but spread
Right.
throughout is really something to
beneficial.
look forward to and recover. I would also just like to state that I think, at least in my household and others, the early start concept that we've continued is phenomenal, especially falling on a Wednesday. I think it helps these teenagers who stay up too late because they think they can, recover with a little sleeping in, like tomorrow morning will be in our house and everyone's houses. I would also like to, I don't want to say reserve the right, but check back in October to see how some of the new things this year are working, which would be the school improvement day concept, which is, the first one will be end of September, just to continue to
28th.
seek input from all the, not just the board and not just the community, but teachers and students to see how that's all working, because that's a new thing for us this year, but.
So maybe we revise version 2 and to make the winter break standard and build those 2 days in throughout the semester. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? That's the general agreement?
I think that would be great, and if you look at, like, do you have a way historically to look in February? This is, to look at, like, when do kids miss a lot after, like, President's Day? I mean, we never took our kids skiing or anything, 'cause,
It's popular for college visits.
More college visits.
Yeah, spring.
So really, that'll be the thought is when, strategically, when can we build in a 3 or 4 day weekend in the
That Friday
spring?
before
Yeah.
that Tuesday,
Yeah.
when would that be? Would that make sense then to do it around there? People are gonna miss it anyways.
We can bat that around as a team and see
Yeah.
see what works best for that spring.
Well, and I appreciate that too. I know one of the things that's always, always a consideration is the less interruptions of a regular school week. So you have a 5-day regular
Yeah.
instructional learning time week. And rather than to disrupt multiple of those, I would rather have them lumped together with something else and keep some continuous, keep as many continuous learning weeks as possible.
I think that's a good, like, and if you can pull when kids would be typically missing, like college visits, something, whatever. When would that be a good time to do?
Yeah, April is a messy month. It always is. And for our seniors and many of our AP students, once you roll into May, it's 2 weeks of AP tests and the year's pretty much over. So when Easter is late, our AP teachers really hate the fact that we have like an April 19th day off, because you've already had that mess of a week. That becomes a senior spring break, essentially. The 10th, 11th, and even though students will be here on the 12th, our seniors will have a low attendance on that. But the state decided to put the state test on. We disagree every year about it, but, and then you already have that shortened week coming back from spring break. So there are a lot of considerations. I know that in DuPage County, which we often look at because not only do many of our teachers work there, but they're just to the west of us, that March 1st is that Institute Day, and many of them take a Casimir-Pulaski Day on the 4th. So that sort of March weekend, either Friday or Monday or both, might be an option too.
Julie, when you said something about the school improvement days, were you talking about the later start on Wednesdays?
No,
Or are you
sorry,
talking about the school improvement days that
Literally,
are half
I was
days?
just highlighting how great late start is for a lot of people, and then separately acknowledging that these school improvement days in the current school year are new, and the first one's coming up. They happen to be on Wednesdays, as I understand. And you don't start late, but you get out at 11:30, is that right?
Correct.
You, the student. So I wondered so I see a repeat of that concept in the proposed
Yeah.
calendar for the next school year, and just, we haven't experienced one yet.
Yeah, actually, we did that for about 8 years prior to the pandemic.
They're not
Except for the
new.
8 years prior to the pandemic.
So,
I'm not familiar.
right. So that was pretty common then, but that was when we were also alternating Wednesdays on for a late start, off for a late start. So,
So they are they're not new, it's just that we had to.
we haven't done them since the
Because of
pandemic.
COVID.
Right, till this year.
And I likewise am interested too in hearing about how the extended late start is working for our staff and our teachers to meet as course teams and division teams and so forth. But, I'm looking at the school improvement days, and those are 4 half days plus the early dismissal day, right? So we've got 5 half days there that are counting as full days towards our certified staff.
What was the fifth one? Four
March
early?
22nd.
The 22nd.
Oh, the 22nd, yeah. Yep.
So we've got 5 half days there with an increase of time on Wednesdays for the division meetings and the course team meetings. So, I can't help but to look at that and say we are missing 5 half days of instructional time there. And if we can show that it is very advantageous, if we can do more with professional development and so forth, I think that's an important trade, but I just want to make sure that there's accountability around those days, and especially with the, in my mind, I'm always thinking like, with institute days, there's never enough, right? With initiatives, there's never enough time. So how can we pull back maybe some structured professional development time, or any of these days opportunities for that, since we have built-in time every single Wednesday now?
Yeah, just from a 50,000-foot view, we have dedicated late start time for teacher teams, early dismissal time for whole division meetings, and institute time for whole district meetings. Obviously, there's a lot of layers that go within that, but we kind of lost that ability of a division chair to bring their whole division together.
Yeah.
They would do it in August and then never have a chance to do it again, so the early dismissals give them a chance those afternoons to to have
And
division.
March
five
has a
afternoons.
couple of wrinkles, too.
The fifth one, the early dismissal on March 22nd,
Yeah.
is related to our long-term desire to modify parent-teacher conferences. From an equity perspective, we would love to offer a conference time during the day, which we've never done here. We've always just offered it in the 2 evenings. And so for families that may work in the evening and want to do it during the day, we'll have to walk through this at some point, but it's all comes down to teacher time. And so if we do the Thursday, what's the date? October.
That would be
Thursday,
October
October
the
27th. If we
26th.
if we don't have that as a student attendance day, which we don't on this proposal, we could do conferences during the day for families and staff. That would be a work day for them. And then we'd have to make up that time somehow, and we thought we could make it up on that March 22nd, which is leading into spring break. So it really is focused on the parent-teacher conference piece.
And so that March 22nd early dismissal might
That
go
would just be,
away
that would just be an early dismissal for everyone.
for everyone.
We would
Okay.
basically be giving our staff the time back that they used in October. We'd be giving it back to them in March. And again, this is all, we've shared this with the LT. We've not had discussions with them. We're doing that next week, but
And
that's the.
then March
proposal there.
13th, just to clarify, the state requires all of our juniors to take a science assessment on a computer. We've tried to do it by pulling them out of classes, and it takes upwards of 3.5 weeks. So we'll be piloting this year, and again, we're just going to assume that it's going to make more sense, is that on that early dismissal on the 13th in the morning, the juniors will be taking the Illinois Science Assessment here at North Campus. Freshmen and sophomores will have a normal early dismissal day. Seniors, we're still working out what we want to do with them on that particular day. But for sure, we'll be giving that Illinois Science Assessment to all juniors. That is a part of our school rating, and the rating isn't so much on how well they do, it's whether they take it or not. And so this will ensure us to capture as many as possible and not have to chase them for weeks like we did last year.
So I want to recap this. So here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing we share version 1 as is. But we modify version 2 so that winter break is 2 weeks versus 2 weeks and 2 days. And then we build in a longer weekend, 2 longer weekends throughout the spring to make up those 2 days. And we share both of those versions with our community over the next few weeks. And then we can keep the board updated on. And we'll also be having discussions with the LTA, with our staff, our administrative team. We'll bring all that back to the board for more discussion during a second reading. Did I recap that right?
Makes sense to me.
So we'll see that update in the next.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll do a second reading in October, but once we modify version 2, I'll share that with the board so you guys can have the most current version that's being shared.
Sound good? Great. Thank you. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Scott, we're going to stick with you and talk about the curriculum change proposals for 2023, 2024. First reading.
Real quickly, Scott, a couple questions came in from the board, from the packet. Scott will address some of them. The ones he doesn't address, we'll make sure we share with the board. A couple about robotics that came up, and then, the other ones are about summer school, so we'll get to that later, so.
Sure. So you do have before you a number of proposals. Just to remind you of our process, I meet with chairs late winter, and talk a little bit about what they're thinking as far as their changes. They then put together proposals, and if they are complete proposals that I feel have a chance to move forward, we'll have them move forward to the full team. So then curriculum staff development team includes representatives from each division as well as administrators. We hear a presentation by the chair and anyone else who might have been a part of putting together the proposal. And then we vote. The vote is really just, it's certainly not binding. They're not making any decisions. It's just a way to communicate, whether people agree that this is something to move forward or not. Following that, we bring it forward to you. And this is that first reading. So you have in your packet a list of all of the proposals. You have a list of the summaries along with the vote. And then you also have the actual proposals themselves. So as this is a first read, we haven't weighed in as a central leadership team as to our final recommendations. We're still looking at a number of pieces. We always want to look at, is the proposal being realistic in the facilities that it needs and in the equipment that it needs, all those kinds of things. So we're doing that vetting right now. And then, just sharing with you as well at the board level to get your thoughts and any other things that you might want to know prior to making a decision. So we'll have this first reading today. We'll present again also at the board meeting in 13 days, and then they'll come back again in October for a second reading, but that will also include our recommendations from the leadership team, and then the final vote would be in October. If the decision in October is, we still aren't ready, we may table something until November. That's happened. We had one go all the way to December one year. Or we may say, we're going to pull this one. It's not, ready for at this time. So, again, there's a lot of different things that are considered as a part of a curriculum change. Generally, the things that come to the board and that go through this process either alter a course significantly, change the level of credit that the course is granted, or are new courses entirely. So, or drop courses. So you see a little bit of all of those in what we have tonight. So that's our process. So as you see, we have proposals from Fine Arts, Physical Welfare, Math, Science, Global Studies, and Language Arts. I'm going to take them one at a time rather than attempt a summary, just so if you have specific questions, we can mark those with that specific proposal. So we'll begin with Fine Arts and the art request of advanced photography, digital photo art. Years ago, we had a darkroom, and it was only at North Campus, and so we only had advanced photography at North Campus. That was, if a kid wanted to commute 1st or 8th, we were able to make that happen if it needed to happen, but generally, no one took advanced photography until they were a junior or senior. Now that advanced photography has essentially become digital photo art, we want to change the name, so it's no longer advanced photography. It becomes advanced digital photo art, and that we want to schedule it off also at South. We have students who take digital photo art, the introductory course at South and in the summer. So there are students who, even by the time they're freshmen, are ready for an advanced digital class. There are other classes they could take after that advanced course. So that's the proposal for advanced digital photo art. Any questions on that one?
I just wanted to say for this and for all of them, and I can't remember if it was like this last year, but I really appreciated the write-ups that tie back to, strategic plan goals and initiatives. I thought some of it's really obvious sometimes, but the level of detail that gets added, because we don't live in that space, isn't always the obvious part. So I don't know. I can't remember if it was there last year or not. Probably,
It was, and next year it'll be aligned to our new strategic plan.
Yeah.
So you'll note that
okay.
some are addressing things
Close.
that aren't really in the plan anymore. But that's, it's the best we could do at the time. But yeah, definitely, we over the years, we found it was the more information, the better for everybody. So, even asking what other high schools are doing. A lot of times we would get questions here at this table, and we're like, well, oh yeah, why didn't we ask that? So we ask it now, right? So, a lot of times too, you'll have this from the relatively myopic lens of a division or a department thinking, well, this is my digital photo class. Why do you care what happens in special ed or whatever? But then we start having the conversation, you can see how it impacts other things. So that's that one.
Thank you.
So do we have a sense of what type of, since this will be part of a sequence then, correct? And do we have a sense of what type of enrollment we would hope to
Never.
expect? Never.
Never.
But we can gain or garner some sort of projection based upon the course that would be before this, right? Is it a?
I can't say in any way, and Ed, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you've been looking at these as well for years. What'll often happen is kids take electives if they have the space in their schedule. So they'll take a digital photo class, we'll have a lot of kids do it. No one will take an advanced because they just don't have the room in their schedule. Others will take the introductory class and love it, and everybody loves it, and everybody wants to take the second. And sometimes we can predict it, and sometimes we can't. What we've always taken as our sort of litmus test is the course that's preceding it popular? And is it something that a student would consider making a decision on? So that would mean not taking something in our FCS class or not taking something as an AP class. So that's really the only way we can look at it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Jewelry and metalsmithing is one of those where every kid at South said, I have to take jewelry and metalsmithing too. And sometimes it runs, sometimes it doesn't, right? So it's not it's really hard to guess. And a lot of it's because of our kids' schedules. They have, we have so many courses and so many options. But sometimes we'll run something and it just isn't running and we'll just ultimately drop it. And it just didn't catch on for whatever reason. And even last year, we had courses we thought kids would really like, and we got very few enrollments. Or others that we thought, this would be kind of interesting, and yoga is through the roof, and we had to build a yoga studio, right? So these are, we do our best.
Yeah.
It's a great problem to have.
Yeah, right? So Adaptive PE Leaders is a new course and really a new concept. This course would be for students to sign up for, essentially to help our other students in our adaptive PE program, in our special ed program. So the students would be trained on how to work with another student, and that's a component of the course. And then they would also work one-on-one with the students. And I don't know if Jen or Leslie, if you want to add something. This is something we saw at other schools, and we see as a possibility of growing beyond just PE, also in FCS and perhaps some other elective areas. I don't know if either of you wanted to add anything on that one.
The only thing that I would add is, having seen this type of program in 2 other schools, same district, oftentimes when kids who participate as those peer tutors or peer leaders leave and graduate, they cite that this type of program as one of the most impactful in their high school career. And so I think there is significant benefit on both sides here, in support of our students who need some additional support, and for our students who work in that peer tutor, peer leader capacity as well. And the thought about potentially growing that out of physical education is really exciting as well, and could be a model, as Scott said, for a lot of different elective areas. So very excited about the potential with this program, and think that it'll be a very, kids will be really interested in it, which is great.
And it does not take the place of the PE requirement. It would be in addition to
Correct.
the PE requirement. And what's FCS? You said that?
Family and Consumer Science.
Gotcha, okay.
I think it's a great idea. I love it. The only question I would ask, under your brief description of it, in the proposal and change, it says the course will provide students with training to modify activities for various students as well as supporting students with special needs. So would you be worried about a privacy violation? So if you're only looking at, it's easy to say, if a student's in a wheelchair, how do you modify that class? But especially when you're getting to, there's all different reasons why you might be in special ed. How do you incorporate the privacy aspect of that?
Sure. That's all a part of the training on the course and a part of the student interviews. And just because you sign up for this class doesn't mean that you get in. There needs to be some vetting of the students in particular. As far as the exact specifics of what is shared or not shared with a student regarding their IEP, that I know is something that we would have to have some very clear conversation with the special education department.
And just that would be the only thing I think, because I think it's a great idea, but just what kind of, how much can they adapt to it because not all disabilities are visible.
Sure.
And are you looking at only doing it within the life? Or are you looking at kids within the special ed that are mainstreamed?
That would just be with the life
Okay.
and transit, or not even transition, just the life PE.
Okay.
And I just had a question too, what does something like that look like from a curriculum standpoint? Is that something that when you say they're trained in it, is that curriculum that we've adopted from other successful programs with this? So there's some kind of, there's education before there's interaction, is that how something like that would work?
Right, it's kind of a combination of a teaching methods course as well as a PE course. And then there's also fitness areas, so the students are doing their own fitness. Again, let's say that we have a class size of 24 and there's 12 students that are in the life class. They would also be working in pairs and trading off. So this is something that has a whole lot of organization and sort of back-end planning that goes with it. It won't be like every day, hey, buddy, let's go, run a marathon. It's going to be very deliberate, and there's actually a sort of phase-in process that kids have to go through the training first. So, and we've debated how to do that training. Some schools have done it over the summer. Some have built it into the course. We're building into our course, and we can kind of see how things go from there.
Does it yield some kind of certification or anything out of that, like from a job?
No,
skills
but
standpoint?
I guess whenever I've been a part of interviewing special educators, they'll talk about that moment when they realize that's what they wanted to do, and it'd be something like this.
Okay.
If I can just jump in with one piece. I think the piece is how are we allowing other students to be in the least restrictive environments, and so that they should be in classes with their like peers. And so, you in a lot of other schools, you're going to go in and kids are just in their classes, and if that's your partner in the group, the teacher is there helping with supports or our paraprofessionals, and students are then able to learn to work with other individuals to their strengths and assist. And I think this is just a great way, so you don't have to know their private information, but just that when we see and are able to work with other people, this is a way to do that. And more schools and classes have different ability level students in there participating. So other examples might be a foods class, a health class, a music class, and things like that. So I think this is an amazing way to begin, and we should be in spaces where other people, and we don't have to know their private information or levels. So I think we'll be in great shape, and again, those teachers are going to be there to support.
Very forward thinking concept. I love it. I forgot what I was going to ask about it though. So I will just leave it with that comment. It wasn't anything too meaty.
Come back to it if you think of it. Come back to it.
This will be a
Is it Best Buddies, a club?
Yes.
That's historically, or from what I recall, been well-attended, quite popular. And so, to Dawn's earlier question about, gauging interest, not saying that would be for sure a one-for-one, but there's demonstrated interest in this type of thing, if I'm understanding the program already. Okay, thank you.
The other thing, and we discussed this at the committee level, the CSD team level, all of our life programs are at South. And so these will be generally sophomores that would be doing it. So whereas other schools might have sophomores, juniors, and seniors, we didn't really see a way to commute kids over to make it work. But that being said, if a student does this class and has a spark for wanting to go into that as an education class, at North we have all the child development and education classes, so they could move that. And we're also working on an articulated agreement with Northern Illinois with some of our teaching through COD, so maybe expanding in that too. So there's we see a lot of potential to move some more kids into that sort of career pathway.
A lot of wins on that one.
Yeah, that's great. And I love when you can put a sequence together too,
Yep.
to the point of what you're describing. So even if we're not seeing, a ton of demonstrated interest in the beginning of it, to being able to put the scope and sequence together and connect it with other classes and, really give a robust, interdisciplinary opportunities, I think it's outstanding.
Basic self-defense is a new course. We're also looking at changing the name of an our existing self-defense course, which is self-defense for girls, for women, for a couple reasons. But ultimately, when we started the one that was identified for girls, the question was, what about for boys? And so this is essentially that class. That being said, we wanted to make sure that we're naming it in such a way so that we're not getting kids into sort of a decision-making. So I'll let Jen sort of explain that, because as we went through this discussion, the original name for this course, and I think I scrubbed all the old names off, but it was Step Back in Human Performance for Boys, I think was the name for it, and we all hated the name. Everybody hated the name. But the program, the curriculum materials, that's what the name is. But we felt that we wanted to do it a little differently, so I'll let you pick
I think
up.
we were trying to remove that barrier and obstacle of just kind of like gendering it in the title. And so I think by removing that, it'll allow students to see that and identify the course that's going to work for them, and give them their own privacy and respect those boundaries. So I feel like the team really did a great job in that review process, coming to what you see in the documentation right now.
So we'll have a basic self-defense course. Students can choose either one that is for students who identify as female or identify as male. It's not in the title. And then the curriculum will be that for the group that chooses what they choose. So we think that'll be a good way to make it happen, let kids be comfortable in their choices, and get the curriculum that they would feel most comfortable with, so.
So will the description, I'm confused by it, I'm sorry.
They'll have like the overall course, and then underneath it'll be like A or B, and so then you would know what section that you would be in by it. So, but the overall description of the title, so when students are looking for it, they can go, oh, I will be interested in this course, and then they could look under it, and it'll have a descriptor of like, here's this course number for you for this gender, and this one, that gender you identify here.
Yeah, the course description is in the packet.
And if you're non-binary, you can do either?
Correct.
Okay.
Their-
You can
their
select what
choice.
you would prefer.
That would be in the packet, page, sorry, I got a lot of pages. Page 74, at the very bottom, provide an updated course description. So that's what will go in the APG.
The self-defense course that's going on right now is hugely popular, right?
Hugely.
And can we expand that, or will everyone be able to take this class?
Yeah, we've been able to meet the needs of, we haven't turned anyone away from the current course. What we've seen in other schools, there aren't as many boys that sign up for the class, so this section doesn't run with as many enrollees. So we'll certainly play that by ear, but essentially, we've created a new PE space out of necessity at South. Gyms aren't cutting it anymore for yoga and dance and our self-defense classes. So we have a brand-new yoga studio over in the Vaughn building. And so that's really eased some space in the dance gym and the gymnastics gym to offer some of these other classes too, so.
And the self-defense that's going on right now, that's at North, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, both of these are at North.
Okay, both, okay.
And I think my only comment to that, Allison, piggybacking on the North campuses, and it's a comment, and I know there's logistics, so I just want to throw it back out there again, is I would really love to see this earlier, offered at a younger, like, level, at like a sophomore level or sooner. I mean, I feel like junior year is late.
Yeah.
It's late.
We've talked about that. The curriculum is geared more towards that 11th, 12th, especially relationships and relationship issues. And in talking with Kurt about it, the health class is really important as a precursor, and that's sophomore year. So to go into some of this without the health components, he felt that it would be a bit much to try for sophomores. That being said, we can keep looking at it. I mean,
Yeah, and I think then that's, yeah, like, does the health component start freshman? And then, I mean,
Yeah.
I just think realistically, I'm sure you guys have experienced what you experience with your own children or your own students and people that you live around. And in a lot of ways, I just don't think it's really almost never too early. And like I said, yeah, the self-defense, the feedback that I've heard in the community and from the actual students themselves have been so positive. Some of them have told me it's been life-changing, and to a point where I think they felt that if they had gotten it sooner, it would have made a different impact on their life going into their older years, their more
True.
maybe actively dating and socializing years. So it's just something to think about. I think that's been brought up a couple times, and so if we can continue to look at how those opportunities, if those opportunities do become available or evolve, that would be awesome.
Well, and especially since part of the issue, as you said, Carrie, on the front end of this, it's logistics. If we were a one-campus school and we had all of our students at one campus, we would have broader accessibility probably to many of our courses earlier. So just like we moved to yoga and now to North Campus, just to keep looking at ways and avenues to take these opportunities and not have the barrier of if you're at North or South Campus be a barrier.
Can't take it, yeah.
Right.
And we have lots and lots of duplicate equipment, the split campus is woven into every fabric of every decision we make. And
Yeah, I know.
do we need 2 auto shops? Well, the auto department would love 2 auto shops, right? Yeah,
Thank you so much.
sure.
Yeah, it's great.
I'll share that with Kurt as well, about
Great.
where it's offered. So, moving on to the math science area, we've had for years an astronomy course and a geology course. They were semester courses. They are semester courses. Students can take them in any order. They are prep level science courses, and really aren't designed to be taken before one or the other. Often students will take only one to make up a science class that they might not have done well in, or just out of general curiosity. That being said, we've been talking a lot, in particular, looking at state mandates. One of them is, again, the Illinois Science Assessment has on it earth science, and earth science is not really taught in schools. Biochem physics is not on the earth science side of things. The thought here is to create an earth and space science combined course that becomes a year-long science course that does meet those state requirements. And if you're not like totally into astronomy or totally into geology, if you take the course, you'll gain an understanding and a better appreciation for the other. It's to some degree, it's a cosmetic shift in putting the two together, but we also recently hired a science teacher who has an advanced degree in this area and would be a great person to tap into to help build it. So taking advantage of that, really the timing seemed pretty good. We still will have the astronomy class that gets dual credit through Moraine Valley, and that's a year long, and we'll still have some other options for students if they don't, not at the prep level, but this gives us another prep level annual science elective or science course that lasts a full year. It is essentially in the sense of an elective because we only require 2 science classes prior to graduation. However, for many of our students, the biochem physics pathway isn't really where they're headed, and so this would give them a chance to do biochem and this course to have 3 sciences that most colleges would like to see.
So there's an astronomy that's a dual credit, 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And this will be the prep level
Earth and space together.
What other semester courses are going right now in the science?
For prep level or in general? We don't have very many. And that's part of the reason we've been trying to figure out how to best fit a lot of our sciences, and when we have the semesters, where to place them. So right now, these are the only 2 is astronomy and geology. All the rest are annuals.
Okay. And then in the level 4, are there any semester-long ones?
No. Nope.
So I guess this could be the place to ask the question, but with the elimination of humanities, prior in the past, I believe that students were placed into a track of science that didn't necessarily lead to physics if they wanted to be on a college planning track to have physics, because most colleges want physics included in their curriculum. So with the elimination of humanities, I thought when we had humanities, it determined the science placement.
That was an early iteration of how humanities placements were done, yes. So it's an option now to have physical science prep or biology prep as a freshman.
So when did that option happen? This year or this past year or?
It's been a couple of years. It was always a recommendation, and again, the idea with the physical science prep course was that for a student who wasn't necessarily ready for a biology prep or who had reading needs, it was more of a survey of science. It's a low enrollment course currently, and there's been a lot of discussion about eliminating it.
Right, so that's why I'm asking, because it's like if you're looking to have, students to be on a path for college graduation or to get to college and to have those credits and to ensure that they're on a path to secure those credits that they need in science that gets to a physics, then, not a lot of parents may know that whole sequence of what may happen if their child is placed into like the prep,
Physical science prep.
Prep level, because that's a big impact that they may have to try to dig out of. So the reason the question I'm asking is that hopefully that we're looking at this and like we're figuring out how to best be able to serve when you've moved to the co-teaching model, like how that affects the science placement and for students who still may want to be on track to be prepared for college, to get into college, versus us like having to like kind of define that for them, that that's the track that they're going to be in, and that by the time they realize it, it's too late for them to be able to make an impact.
Some of the work that we've been talking a lot about last year was this whole concept of leveling up. And so that has been that conversation with us, with our teachers, with our students, of really knowing about the impact of levels and how can we encourage students to take that leap to move into that higher level. Because I think what you're asking is when students they can think I'm at this level of math or science, but when I'm applying for that college, I haven't achieved at the high enough level to get into that, Division I school or whatever, or that program that I would like to go in. So I feel like that's a lot of the work that we've been talking about and doing right now, of how we can encourage students to make sure that they can move into and have the skills and confidence to move into those higher levels. So we've been doing a lot of work with that this past year, just for that exact reason, so that students, because so many of our kids are ready, but they just have to know about it and feel confident to go into those higher level classes. So I think our numbers that we'll see with our work with EOS kind of demonstrate that, for kids making that move.
And we're talking in great detail about that with our curriculum review this year. We're looking at our freshman courses, and as our biology team gets together, we'll also be looking at where that physical science prep course fits or does not fit.
The other piece is that the planned scaling of co-teaching includes biology co-taught next year. So that will be an option for our freshmen.
So that communication level will happen with the teacher, between the teacher and the student? Is that where that's like, is that where the connection gets made?
That's generally the articulation with the associate schools and
Right.
some initial placements. But we've also, again, even though humanities, and that's one of the later proposals, is on the docket to be eliminated, it is still on the books for this year. We just didn't place anyone in that sequence, because not only just because of co-teaching, but also shifting the teachers into that area that have reading backgrounds, working more with our ELs in particular in that area. A lot of the components of that world history class and that freshman English class, we've ensured that students who are struggling have the resources they need in their least restrictive environment, even though those students didn't have IEP. So essentially, we've been blending these two together.
Right, so, just to reiterate, like, students were placed, if they were placed into humanities at the time, they were automatically placed into, like, a physical science prep class that didn't allow them to get to a physics by junior year, that most colleges want to see on their transcripts. So that's why I'm just saying, like, we should be looking to ensure that we're addressing that in some way, since we've eliminated humanities and since we were talking about science. That's why I brought it up now.
Yep, and I'm telling you, we are.
Right.
Thank you. No, that's
Thank
good.
you.
That's helpful, yeah. And also, no surprises, too, because I think, back to your point about parents not being aware of that or something, sometimes it's, you don't want that big surprise when you thought the kid was going to be able to have options and opportunities, so. All right.
Our second course in the science area is medical terminology. If you recall, we started an Introduction to Healthcare Careers course this year, extremely popular. I believe we have 11 sections of that course running this year, which is tremendous for a first course. This is the next course in a sequence. There's a couple different ways where you can place medical terminology, but ultimately this is a component that has to happen in any sequence of any sort of a career pathway with the medical field. The way we've envisioned it, and we talked about this with the proposal for Intro to Healthcare Careers, intro first, then medical terminology, and then there's really three paths you can go here at LT. Two that are fully developed, and the other that you'll see another proposal from most likely next year. One is in a more traditional science pathway that includes our anatomy and physiology course, AP Bio, that path. So a student who does Intro to Health and medical term, that's one path. Another one is to then go through the sports medicine and our training program, so that goes in that path. And a third one is a nursing pathway, and so that's something you'll see proposals for next year. So moving in that direction as well, so that our students, they won't graduate high school as nurses, but they will have the opportunity to earn credentials. They will most likely, depending on the person we hire and the interests of students, there's a chance for students to get, for example, a phlebotomy certificate or those kinds of things. Or having completed this course, going to TCD for 2 years and working, they can get multiple credits through COD and also multiple certifications that way as well. So we see this as the second step on that pathway, and really a great opportunity for kids. And also in working with our local hospital, they're interested in partnering. And then I've also had a lot of conversations with COD. They have a satellite campus in Westmont, and that is actually not that far from here, but it's a full setup with hospital beds, life-size, quasi-animatronic patients, and all that kind of stuff. So the more we can do to sort of partner in that area, that'll give our kids more opportunities. So we're excited about this course as well.
It's impressive.
It's a hard class too. Learn all the muscles, all the bones, all the nerves, all that. So it's a challenging class. Moving into the applied tech area, these next two proposals, engineering and invention and engineering design, have been courses where we've offered either level 3 or level 4 credit. What that means is everyone signs up as a prep class, and then they do an extra project to make it a level 4. Almost everyone chooses to do the extra project, and the more that we've done this in other departments, we've said, well, then just make it a level 4 class, and then you can beef up some other pieces along the way. And so that's what the proposal is here for Engineering Invention 1 and Engineering Design. Also, both of these courses have recently gotten dual credit status through Triton Community College, so students are able to earn college credit as well. So that tends to be a level 4 or level 5 credits as well. So these are also very popular and lead our kids along, ideally in another career pathway, in that engineering pathway. What we often hear from schools like U of I and Purdue and whatnot is that students go into engineering not knowing what engineering is. They're just good at math and science. So the more we can incentivize a kid to take a class like this and figure out what it might be, they might make a better choice, or they might confirm their choice, right? So As a former engineering student, I think that's a great idea.
It is a great idea. As a parent of a couple of students that have gone in the direction not knowing, but they were good at math and science, I think it's a great idea too. It's a lot of money to spend at the college level.
I found myself, but it wasn't in engineering, right?
But that, and just to put a fine point on that though, like when we were talking about the healthcare pathway and this pathway, I mean, having that exposure, I mean,
huge.
even if you save one semester worth of a course that somebody's not investing in it and going in another direction. I mean, last year we talked a lot about all this and outcomes related and interdisciplinary and things like that. So I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I didn't spend a ton of time, but these next two areas that we're talking about, engineering, and then the area of robotics, and then I'm going to lump computer science in that. We, with our population of students that we have coming to LT and the interest and the places where our students go, I've always kind of wondered, you know, are we challenging ourselves and providing a robust enough sequence of curriculum for those students? And in those you know, those are the 2-3 areas. If you consider, I guess I consider robotics as part of an engineering pathway, but you know, there are other high schools that have multiple engineering pathways from mechanical to electrical and so forth. So I guess in hearing about you talking about the process of how these courses come to the table, I think, you know, there's some onus on us and responsibility on us to say what should we be developing and designing here, and you know, making sure that we have those courses available for our kids.
Right.
So you know, I'm thrilled to see this, but these are kind of replacements of a couple of classes. I would love to see an expansion of these pathways for computer science and multiple different tracks for engineering.
Well, as far as computer science goes, we've been updating our computer science curriculum as languages change and shift. And we also added another AP, computer science, last year. So that's one that is a moving target, is always a moving target. But the more that our students can take, the better. The one that we found curious is that we had courses on Apple apps and Apple computer science. Those numbers are down significantly. So, you know, we don't know if that's due to what. I mean, we don't know, really. So we're trying to figure that out as we consider what we do with our other computer science classes. As far as other engineering classes, you know, a lot of it also comes down to the qualifications of the instructor and whether we, you know, what can we manage and what can we support. So there are pathways through TCD to do some of these. The problem is TCD is not perceived as a viable pathway for a lot of our parents. And so even though there's a great program, you have to go there for half a day, and it's seen as more of a work-study place. Although you can do computer gaming there, you can do a lot of pretty cool stuff over there. So I think a lot of it is just trying to get, you know, we can't offer absolutely everything here, but how can we partner? And who can we partner with? And that's really where the dual credit has been a great path, because then we can say, look, you're getting college credit for this here at LT. So, you know, something we can also continue to look at. We're also looking, I mean, part of our curriculum review too is looking at our electives, and we have some that just don't have high numbers anymore that were really popular that, you know, you want to offer, like a home maintenance and repair, but it's just not getting taken as much. So, you know, what do you do with that? Do you turn that into some type of an electrical engineering course? You know, do you do something with, you know, our A+ computer repair is really for that, you know, the kids who really want to get in there and take apart and put together computers, and those numbers are also going down. So, you know, we're trying to figure all those pieces out as a challenge.
And it would be interesting to look at other schools who are sending lots of kids to these colleges, as we are here at LT, to understand, are we sending our kids into these fields of study with the same, like, kind of commensurate exposure and experience at LT? Are there areas where we're behind? You know, in computer science, some of the stuff that you're talking about, I think, you know, we don't have some of the programming classes that some of our comparable high schools have. So, it's just, we have, a very successful, talented student body here. And I just think that in the spirit of our strategic plan and making sure that we have a rigorous and robust curriculum, some of these key areas where we know our students are going, I think we need to have a well-developed program for them.
Sure.
Jill, did you have
I do. I'm all about the electrical, like the engineering and adding things, and like how you were talking about changing different things to look at it. The only thing I would ask for when we come back for this is the engineering and invention. These classes don't have for the curriculum change proposal form. They're not really fully filled out.
And
I'd
that's-
like to be able to see that. Even though it sounds good, but to see if we can have that filled out, because all the other courses do have that, because I'd like to have all that full information.
Sure. Yeah, I think the perception was just by changing that level, they weren't really changing a whole lot in the course, but we can have them flesh it out.
That'd be great. So I think it will follow, where do we plan it to go, where are the other schools having it in comparison to what you had said about that. I think it'd be a nice oversight.
Well, in talking with our engineering teachers, and I went to the robotics competition last spring that was actually at a tech center. I believe I forget which school now, but it's Rich Township. Yeah, so they've taken one of their buildings and turned it into a tech center, and the equipment in that place is amazing. It's all automated. They have a robot fighting ring. They have 3D printers like you wouldn't believe. They've created their own businesses, right? They've basically made a tech center, not unlike TCD. A lot of that stuff you'll also find at TCD, Technology Center DuPage, which we send students to. And Blake Souders, one of our engineering teachers, was just drooling, and he's like, you've got to see this, and you've got to see this, and I'm taking all these pictures of equipment that's like, I don't even know what this thing does, and it's as big as a car. So there is some real potential there, and it's really a question of, again, what is our capacity and what is our, certainly we have student interest. What's the balance there? Because I was looking at $100,000 worth of equipment that they got donated from a company who then was also setting up the internships that the kids are, because the jobs aren't getting filled because the kids aren't. But it also, for many of those, is not a college pathway, but they're coming out with making money $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 right out of high school. So again, some of that is we have to have some pretty big conversations about, what, if we want to go in those directions, what are our options? What are our facilities, limitations? If you walk through those clean rooms, literally, at that center and then walk through our Vaughn building, there's a huge difference, right? So, again, it's just a matter of what we can sustain and what we are able to do. And they come with big price tags. You can see even just with the robotics, to go to the advanced robotics class, there's quite a heavy investment in the additional equipment. That being said, we're always being very flexible with our career and tech ed spending to try to, we have plasma cutters and we have things that a lot of schools don't have, but it's really in service of the curriculum rather than, hey, I'd really like to get one of these, which is always a challenge anyway, just try to make all that happen. So that being said, the robotics 1 and 2 have come out of a really positive club experience. I can't use grant money to buy the robots for the club, which is why the club is turning kids away. They don't have enough robots for all the kids that initially are interested. So what we're able to do, though, by building the course is we have more robots, we can have more kids in the club. So these kind of go hand in hand. The interesting thing about LT, and you'll see this in some areas, everyone would say we've got an amazing theater program, for example. Nobody takes theater classes here at LT. Almost nobody. They do other things and do the theater on the outside. These robotics, that's the only option right now is on the outside. We haven't had the courses, but again, with those pathways, we think we have a number of students who, for this will be that thing that they really want to go into. we debated offering only robotics 1 and not robotics 2 right away. But a lot of times when we haven't built a sequence, the students aren't sure what's next. And so if you don't say, hey, take this class because then you get to do this, that's more of an incentive than, well, I'm already doing the club, why would I want to do the class, right? So the reason why they're together, and we went round and round about this, again, you know, there is cost involved to get things started. But again, going to these competitions, seeing what these other schools are doing, seeing what the kids at the other schools are doing, they're in these classes as well. So that's really what we're looking at. I mean, there are some minor sort of facilities adjustments that we can do in one of our classrooms to create the robot fighting ring, for lack of a better term. But that really is a place where these things don't have to be put away because then kids are coming in doing other classwork that's making dust and whatever. So really the gymnastics of figuring out how all this works in our existing facilities, we feel we can absolutely create a space for our robotics program. And then again, with the knowledge of our instructors of what they can do with a club versus what they could do with an entire course, they're very excited about that. And then, you know, when Blake first brought the Robotics 2 proposal, which has about $78,000 worth of robots that we need to buy just for that one class, he's like, but here's what they can do, and this is what they can do that's different, and this is what they're leaning towards, and they're all ready for this. And, you know, so again, we can start using grant money for those kinds of things. We just have to get the pathway rolling and get things established. So these are brought forward for any questions that you might have, and certainly from my perspective, in looking deeply at what we can actually handle and what we can support, that this is certainly something we believe we can support, and that I see it as leading to many and more later, but that it's sort of the first foray into something a little deeper.
Can I just ask you a question on the robotics?
Sure.
Like, just to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly, so the cost would be roughly like $78,000 for 3 kids, correct?
For the purchase of the robots, it's a one-time cost, yeah.
So that's a one-time
For
cost?
that'll last for about 4 years.
Okay, so it's not like each kid gets a robot for every class?
No, they don't. No, and the kids don't have to buy the robots, but in order to take this course, these are much more highly evolved than the kits that they're using in the competitions.
Okay, so these robots,
They
Are they
design
building
them,
them?
they design them, build them, program them. Then they have them do different things. They can have them, there's different, they have to climb something, pick something up, drop it in this box, and then everybody has to build the robot to those specifications and make it do all those
so
things.
with what you have, there's only 30 robots for 30 kids? It's
Well,
not
this will
like
be a class set, so these will be, if we have 7 sections, we've got enough robots.
You do, okay, so it's not like a robot per kid, it's like a
No.
group of them, okay.
Right.
Because that
Right.
just seemed really high if you calculate it.
And these are, you know, they say they're kits. What it means is they aren't gonna all build the same robot, but they will have the ability to build different robots. They'll be doing these most likely in teams.
Got it, okay.
And then, you know, once they go through that, they'll be programming the robots to do different things. And the competitions, generally, they have all those different, there's 2 components. There's what have you programmed it to do, judging, and then there's the competition where you have to grab so many balls and put them over here or you could steal other people's balls, or, you know, it's.
Okay, so it's just like, so you'd have, it's not one robot per kid, it's like
No.
a team, so you could support multiple.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking it was like one robot a kid.
No,
And that's
no.
only like one class, it seems kind of pricey.
Yeah, no, that, I would
Not
agree.
that I was not supportive, but I was like,
Right, I would agree. No, that, probably, well, the first, what we have now, those robots are about half the cost. The kits are about half of this
Okay.
cost. So, they run on a Raspberry Pi, structure. It's a pretty easy language to learn and that, and these do as well, but they have more things they can do. More capability, more weight, more, the servo motors are bigger, they can carry more weight, they have better controls, yeah, they're fancy, they're cool.
They have like a whole fleet. Have you been to the campuses where they have the robots
Oh, yeah.
delivering all over? It's gonna be like,
I was just
Yeah,
send them back and
we've
forth
got our,
between
we've got our
north and
drones,
south.
we'll have our robots.
Yeah.
You'll walk in a room and just get freaked out.
Drones flying down the
That's
hallway.
how it all starts.
Exactly.
So just to make sure I understood this, the reason that we have not been able to have as many students in the robotics club as would have liked to have been there is the cost of the
Right,
robots.
robots, right.
Having these courses kind of feeds that as well. And we will be able to have more like double the enrollment in the club, even if these kids are not taking the class.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, they'll be able to, there's gonna, I know already though, Blake, I can hear Blake in the back of my mind, yeah, but
Yeah.
the certain things, I'm not letting the kids in the club touch, because they have to go through the training. We're not gonna just take stuff and let people play.
Yeah.
You know, we've gotta have some structure. So I know he's gonna ration it, I can tell already.
And just curious, how did we pay for the initial robots that were necessary for the club?
Done it through different things. We've done it through Title IV grant. We've done it through
CT?
fundraising, through,
Perkins or CT?
no,
I know.
because it's
That's
a
just all
club.
class,
Yeah, we can only get that through a class. We've done it through regular requests through budgeting. I believe PTC might have helped out a little bit. I'd have to double check, but it's been, and just regular budget from the applied tech area. It's been a total piecemeal process, so we've been doing what we can.
Okay.
But our kids made it to nationals. One of our teams made it to
Yeah,
nationals and
fantastic, yeah.
got to go to Texas and do their robot stuff, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. In the social studies arena, we have human geography. As you may know, we've had an AP human geography course now for about 4 years, maybe. And we've always had a prep level human geography, at least we have for over 30 years. There's been no interest in that course now that we have an AP version. And that's sort of elective. And I think partly also because sophomore year with the civics edition, it sort of took away a South Campus slot where kids often took a social studies elective. So really human geography prep is on life support. I don't know if we're even running any sections this year.
Not this year.
Yeah, so this year we didn't even have enough students sign up to run it. So looking to drop that. Incubator is another course that really, we have our Intro to Business class, and one of the projects in Intro to Business is sort of a Shark Tank activity where kids design a product and whatnot. But the Incubator class is a whole year of that, and it's more than just designing a product and pitching it. It's also building all of the plans behind it, the marketing plan, the business plan itself, all throughout. It's a course that for some reason is not getting the enrollment we thought it would. And in talking with Krista Wilcox, who teaches the course, that's one of her concerns, is that kids think of it as Intro to Business 2, which it's not. It's a lot more than that. But because it's been a level 3 course, she feels that kids are seeing it that way, so that by making it a level 4 course, it would be, and a lot of times in our other course sequences, the introduction is prep, the next course is accelerated. This would be the next thing, or you could just join right in on this. But she feels, especially at North, students aren't looking for an 11th and 12th grade prep elective. They're looking for something to distinguish themselves and to show something. So we're looking at this moving into an accelerated level, and we have other schools that do that as well. Other schools don't have 3 levels, but some of them have this as an honors elective and some don't. So it's kind of a mix of how people have targeted it.
That's only offered at North currently,
Correct. Yeah, This is only sort of where the incubator classes are throughout the area. That's an 11th and 12th grade.
Yeah. Which maybe junior year is a tough year to, you've got a lot of kids I think are taking US history, if they, like, it's tends to be a full year, and this is a big commitment. I remember seeing some of the picture materials, I don't remember if it was at LTCAC or some other.
Yeah, at
venue.
LTCAC.
Really cool, really exciting, but, great, I think that's a wise change.
Yeah, for the kid who really wants to go into business school or thinks that business and entrepreneurship is the way to go, they really should be in this class. So whatever we can do to get them in, because they're taught by community members who are in businesses. We just had the orientation for the volunteers last week, and there were 14, 15 business owners there, and they'd love it.
And a lot of repeats that have helped out with this program over the last several years.
So we've had a lot of
Business leaders? Yeah.
business leaders throughout.
Yep. Yep. So that's incubator. Change that to level 4. And then our last proposal is to drop humanities. We talked a little bit about it earlier. Years ago when humanities started, it came out of actually a board goal. We were seeing students weren't growing on the ACT and reading in particular. And so we developed a course. We had a trans level, which is a level lower than prep. We created a humanities course that was at the prep level with the same outcomes as the prep level, focused on English, world history, and reading, a 3-hour block. It has gone through a number of iterations from that start. We used to place students in there directly based on their Explore scores. We no longer use Explore Plan ACT, it's SAT. And then it became, a lot of parents moved their students out of it even if they were placed there and needed the reading support. So we offered those reading supports in the regular prep level, English and world history, in addition to this course. And really, the course had some tremendous instructors who put together some amazing work for the students, but really the students' needs were better served in a regular ed curriculum. Still, I mean, they were both prep. I mean, they're all at the prep level, but really the perception of the course was also waning. The perception was that it was less than prep, and parents who were very involved in their students' placements moved them out, and parents who weren't didn't. And so we were seeing more and more of an attrition. When it first started, there was more of a balance of ability levels, and it became more and more needs. So as we started talking about co-teaching, that certainly isn't the substitute, because that has to do with the student's IEP, and the students in this course generally didn't have IEPs. But because we'd moved a lot of those reading supports and other supports into the prep level, world history and English classes, we felt that by making that shift to co-teaching and shifting the reading specialist from humanities into the world history section, so she's supporting all of the teachers in world history this year, and a number of our English teachers having reading specialist certificates, that this was the right time to drop humanities and move fully into supporting the prep level English and world history with not only co-teaching but also with reading, other sports. So that's that proposal.
Sounds good.
I know it always takes a while, but I appreciate your interest and certainly the attention to the detail, because at least in my area, this is big stuff. For Brian, it's it's not a budget.
Big stuff for Brian, too.
Somehow it always involves money.
I was gonna say, it's big, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll figure them out.
He always perks up a little bit.
We need a robot, donor. That's what we need. We need someone who wants to sponsor.
Well, you know what? Rich Central was able to get donors. You know what I mean? Like we've got a pretty powerful community and pretty powerful connections, and would not surprise me if you build it, Scott, they will come.
Yep.
Is that your pitch? Since it's on video, do you want to look it
Yeah.
up? Out there, tell us.
No,
looking
but-
for.
We have like a sad robot that needs a home.
Well, and-
Sponsor video idea.
And thank you, you thanked us, thank you, and for bringing this, this is germane to what our institution is about,
Sure.
right? Is providing
It's the
these
fun stuff.
opportunities for kids and understanding where the opportunities are, getting excited about the new opportunities, figuring out how we can broaden that and make it more accessible, so I really appreciate it, thank you.
Sure.
It's a really exciting, hitting a lot of different areas, arts, sciences, the business side, everything. So I really appreciate the different changes, and I feel like people are looking outside the box. Great, thanks, Guy.
That's just a first reading, so it'll
That's
come
a
back,
first
and we'll get a lot more information, and
Yep,
We won't read every word next month, but
great.
we'll let you know what changes, if anything.
So then I guess we're going to still stick with Scott Show.
We will, yes. We'll just finish up with an information item with our summer programs. We've traditionally shared what's happened in our summer programs with the board. Our summer program is not designed to be a break-even venture, I guess, not adventure. We need to support students for certain things throughout the summer, and those are part of our regular budgets, and we also use grants as well. But we also, I know maybe you've heard it from your own kids or your neighbor's kids when you tell them, yeah, my kid is in summer school, they're like, why, do they fail something? Like, no. We have kids who come to summer school to get ahead, right, and do other things, so they can do more things, so they can do these cool classes. So we did have 6,783 registrations across all programs, which is an increase of 2,500. Part of that is Learn to Swim. We definitely brought that back, and that's always super popular. But we were able to offer 27 semester courses, first semester, and 21 second semester, and 450 kids doing consumer ed online through Only Virtual, as well as a lot of other programs that get kids ready to come to school or keep their skills up through our extended school year to return in the fall without as much learning loss. So, we certainly have that academic program, and this was a challenging one. There was lots of air conditioning work being done. So we were at North at first, and then we got kicked out of North and went over to South and worked around the construction. And the kids, I think, got a good experience through all that. There were 1,077 in those summer school courses, 849 first semester and 228 second semester. We also had driver ed. That's always a challenge in the summer. We have to offer that. The state requires it for students who live in the district but who don't attend LT to have an opportunity to take driver ed at the local public school. We had 36 students. Most of them were our students, but there were a few who were not LT regular year students. Our extended school year program has been something, used to be in partnership with LADC. In 2002, we took over the whole program, including the costs for all of that. But this is written into a student's IEP, so this isn't like extra or a camp. This is all a part of their IEP and the minutes that they need, and then also all their related services, OT, PT, speech and language paths, psychologist, nurse. Leslie, you can certainly answer any questions people might have about our ESY program. It's something we budget for. I mean, we don't charge for. It's a part of that regular education. We just include the costs and fees here so that you're aware. We also have added some other staff. Not only do we have 36 teachers and a librarian and a nurse, we also have brought in some counselors because that's been helpful for social emotional reasons, as well as for helping students sort of navigate some things in the summer. We have also through special ed 2 summer program coordinators, and then we have our director of summer programs, Adam Davis, who really does amazing work, sort of juggling everything and making sure everything works. We also have security, computer techs, AV, so it's, again, a lot of schools, there are some high schools that don't have 1,077 students in their regular school year, and we do for our 6-week summer session. We did collect $236,000 in tuition and fees. Anything that we collected as far as fees for Illinois Virtual School was exactly what they charged, so we didn't make any profit. So that's why 236, you take off 110 right away. That went straight to that online, those 450 online courses, and then the keyboarding and U.S. history. We also offer a Read 180 program, and that was always sort of a connection with summer bridge reading. So Read 180 is a way for students who are coming in, reading at a lower level, especially through an IEP, to come in and get some reading support and get a lay of the land of the high school and kind of see how things work. There's an incentive to that. We charge people. It's $97.50, but if you come to all the sessions, we give you back your $97.50. But it's basically a little skin in the game to come in and finish it, because the Read 180 is a progressive program. It's a computer-based reading program, and students need to come and work with it and not just sort of come and go, come and go, come and go. So that's been successful. It's rare that we haven't rebated the money back to someone. That's really the academic side. There's more in the report, but there's that's really the highlights. Activity-wise, this was, like I said, we were full on activity, as well as our Learn to Swim. And so we had just an amazing number of kids, 5,179 kids involved in camps. So camps, clubs, activities, sewing, basketball, a lot of basketball. 1,175 basketball players. But football has really grown. Probably 6-7 years ago, we had 120, maybe 200 football players. We had 939 this year. Our new head football coach has been thinking things through, and it's like, why we shouldn't run football during basketball. There's a conflict there. Yeah. So that's helped. Right. Volleyball also had 529. We had 503 Learn to Swim. Again, we didn't have that last year. We just couldn't get the pool, the lifeguards, really, and the COVID pieces. It was too difficult. So those are the highlights, really. The other thing that we've started in summer school is using it for credit recovery. And a lot of times we've made students retake whole courses. Coming out of the pandemic and really talking through with our Academy and Academy Plus programs, we've been using Edgenuity, not only in night school prior to the pandemic, but during the day and in our summer for kids to take courses that they've already failed. So for whatever reasons, they've already attended the course. Now maybe they had a lot of absences, but they've already had it in their schedule and sat through it for a year, and they didn't pass for whatever reason. So we allow them to take Edgenuity, which is a little bit of a different course. They're not retaking the whole course. It starts with a test, and the areas that they know, they don't have to learn anymore. They don't have to study anymore. The areas that they've missed, they do need to work on. And so they do that here at LT. We don't let them do it from home. There is a teacher there and a counselor, and they're working to help them. I mean, we've even employed a math person to even help with some of this in the first semester, to get them to pass the class, right? In some instances, no matter what, the students already failed the class. That F stays on their transcript. This will be an additional grade. So if it's algebra, for example, they'll have an Algebra 1 F. They'll take it in Edgenuity, and they'll get the grade they get through Edgenuity. Some students are entirely content to get a 60, get that D, and be done, and just say, I'm done with algebra. I'm never going to think about it again. Others are like, I'm going to stick with this and keep going. So when a student does get to that passing grade, that's an option for them to stop. We encourage them to continue, but for some of them to get them in the door in the summer that's the incentive, is to get to that. So some of them know, I'm going to be here for 5 days and I'll be done with this. Others will be like, I want to stick with it. So you can see that range of grades and the range of courses. It is, the largest numbers are our core courses: algebra, algebra 2, biology, English, geometry. We have a few others for different reasons. We also had we had a whole lot of credit recovery done throughout the year too. But this was the largest we've ever had in the summer. So this was 99 semester credits based on using Edgenuity. So that's really a component of our summer school that helps kids walk in the fall not behind or less behind.
And I would just add to Scott's point about credit recovery during the course of the year, we had over 200 credits recovered through our academy program and the use of Edgenuity throughout the course of last year. And so that was pretty significant as well, and saw a huge benefit of that program, so that we didn't have to just wait until summer school. So if students had failure first semester, we made every effort to get those students in that academy program to recover the credit right away during second semester.
We had a few not quite make it in academy in May, and we said, well, just come right to summer, just get it done, right? You're that close. We're not gonna make you start over again.
And did we, so a few things, but maybe just let me ask that first question first. Did we have any, I'm assuming there are fourth-year seniors in some of these summer credit recovery numbers?
Some, we only had the one summer grad, I believe.
Two.
Or was it two?
So were we able, the students that otherwise would not have been eligible to graduate, were they able to recover the credits through the program over the summer and graduate? Or do we have fifth-year seniors going on because they weren't able to recover the credits?
We had one or two, I'd have to check that, Dawn, who were able to recover the credits and graduate. And then I think the number seven additional students who, the number of credits needed was too significant for recovery during the summer. So I'd have to look at that number, but
Okay.
there were a few that needed more.
Okay. And am I recalling last year that through our summer programs last summer and through this credit recovery, I don't know why I always struggle on this name, Edgenuity, that we were able to get everybody through, and we didn't have any students after last year that went on to be fifth-year seniors?
Last year, we did get everyone through. This year, yeah, I believe you're right. I'll look at that, but I think last year we did not have anyone come back fifth year.
And-
But I'll get the exact date on that. I think
And we
that
did have
was,
two graduate at the end of summer school this year.
Okay.
it was 11. I know the summer of '21, we had 11 students that did not finish in May, or did not graduate in May due to that, and then,
But they were able to recover it during the summer
Yeah.
and then graduated. And
but I'll confirm that.
So is
This-
We
there-
do always have some who choose not to do the summer work and come back in the fall for a fifth year, for a
Is that-
semester.
And that was going to be my next question. Can you
Yeah,
speak to
that does happen too. I mean, it really depends on the kid. It depends on why they aren't graduating. Sometimes it's health-related, sometimes it's, they have so much to make up that the summer they want to break. I mean, once you get into those situations, they're fairly unique. And usually they don't last more than a semester. They usually don't need more than a semester to make up. But the year prior, we did a lot because of the pandemic to take that into account, and so we didn't keep students back. Going to the previous years, it would be a handful. We had a counselor for our fifth-year seniors and for our transfer students, and we've since rolled that person into a regular grade level counselor, so we don't have that as a separate position. So that's really been something we've been working on. You'll recall also, possibly, we had an ombudsman program, and that was for students to go outside of the school to work at a satellite location with an outside source. When we decided to use that Academy Plus here, we also brought on someone from West 40 to work with our students as a coach. We've since brought on two more people, so there's 3 West 40 folks working in our Academy Plus program this year. So, again, our goal is to get kids out, but to get them out having completed work, not just passing kids along. And we've, with Leslie's support and focus, we've really made a lot of changes to bring everything in-house and provide the supports here.
Yeah, and so this is year 2 of doing that, as I recall, because last summer was the first summer of doing that.
And Academy Plus first year was last year.
Right, okay. And then there were 80 students that were in process for Edgenuity this summer, 30 more than 2021. Is that because of everything you just described, all the extra things that we did, being that it was a post-COVID year? I mean, did we
We
keep the
had a
same
lot-
services as
Last year, if you'll recall, we had kids who struggled a lot last year as well. We had a lot of absences, we had a lot of kids not finishing work. And maybe Leslie, you can address that a little more too, but we just had more need than we had in previous years.
Coming at the end of 2022
Coming
versus
at the end
2021?
of this last school year, into the
Okay.
summer. Everyone thought, oh, we're back, everything will be great.
Yeah.
And we're still, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit too, we're still having attendance issues. And we made that effort with everybody to start the year of saying, hey, come to school.
Yeah.
We'll work with you, we'll figure out what you need to do.
But we didn't reduce services between 2021 and 2022. That's
If
what I was
anything,
trying to
we've
get
added-
at. Like, it's
We've
just,
added many more layers.
yeah.
And they still have needed them. I mean, the needs have grown.
and then my last thing on this, and I asked this of you guys last year, and I think you brought it back to the second meeting, is, you know, it's nice to have an extended historical view of the summer school programs and the costs and the investments, knowing that there's some that are going to be consistent through the years, there's some that are going to add on, but I think you put everything that's kind of in paragraph form here into a chart for last year, so the summer of 2021. If you could update that with 2022. I went looking for it in my board docs, but I couldn't get my hands on it. You know, but I'm pretty sure you did that.
So what would that look like? You're looking for,
I think you did it.
explain again.
So it was looking at like total costs and like, so special education, I'll just give you an example. So I was looking at special education, I was looking at the costs related to the ESY and special ed, and I was like, 43 students were enrolled in this year, yet 68 were last year, but it seems like we increased our costs. So a chart where you can kind of get an easier snapshot view. I know Brian knows what I'm talking about, just to.
Tabular
Yeah,
format
so-
of
Yes.
the
Yeah,
spend and
just
the.
so we can see from year to year.
This same data, just in a chart.
Yeah,
Okay.
in a chart that we can track with, look
we'll
at last
find-
year, look
yeah.
at previous years, understand when we add more services, how our cost per student is going up. Last year, I think we put in, we paid for transportation last year for the first year,
Using a grant, yeah.
using a grant.
I guess
like,
I would want to have some conversations with the Bryans here, just of what we want to, how we want to do that, partly because we haven't included offsets, we haven't included grant funds, we haven't included
Yeah.
IDEA funding, so it's really not this was spent, this was brought in kind of a thing.
Yeah, well, no, I think you did what I'm thinking of
I think we
last year,
just did it
though.
one year. My concern is I don't want to start saying that, let's just say that our costs went up for special ed year over year. We're not going to make decisions on that. We want to make decisions. So I guess my question is, if the whole board thinks that would be beneficial for us to put together, then we can put that together. I want to caution us about making decisions for financial reasons for summer school. It's been either a cost even proposition or a cost losing proposition.
Well, and I would say that the history of this board and the previous history has continued to vocalize and be supportive of increased investment. So it's not, it is just purely to understand the numbers and understand where the investment is coming from, where it's hitting our budget. I would consider, not to make decisions, but to understand what it looks like, how it hits our budget. I think that's part of our fiduciary role.
So maybe through a budget conversation or through a summer school?
I think, I mean, if you just, I just couldn't find what easily today when I looked back.
We'll go back and look, see what we did last year. and
We've done different things over the years. The perception for a while was because money in activities is in the positive, and we spend district revenues that aren't fully covered all by tuition, and the academic side looks quote-unquote negative, is that we're paying for academics with basketball revenue, and that we don't want that mixed, right? And then we also, again, I've presented this to a lot of different boards. I've been lectured also that we are a not-for-profit and we are not profit and loss. It's what we spend, So again, that's not from anyone here. That's just from, those kinds of things too. So I just want to make sure whatever we put forward, that we have a good opportunity to talk about it. Because, and again, things have been so different for each of the last 4 years. That it, for me, I agree, we don't want to just spend willy-nilly.
And I don't think we're doing that, but I think
Yeah.
there's value in understanding and saying, this program showed, very successful. Look how many students we got through, or, whatever, and maybe it warrants additional investment.
Yeah.
Just last year, when you brought back the different academies, and
Right.
we looked through and talked through the cost of bringing it in-house, the pros and advantages, the advantages of having it in here. I mean, I think that's just something that, as a board, we should be looking at.
Yeah, and we are going to need to look at some of these costs too, because they've been grant funded, and some of those grants were pandemic-related grants, and so those will need to be a part of the regular budget, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, do we show that in our budget? I mean, do we have that line item, Brian, just like summer programs? We do just list that out, kind of?
Yeah, everything in there is budgeted for. So there's salaries, supplies, all of that.
And I guess that, the exercise, I mean, because I feel like this information has worked for me to see it summarized this way, but I think, I am interested in knowing if there are other opportunities or other programs that are, right, like, do we have an opportunity, do we want to, can we possibly provide more back to the community or for services for our students, beyond what we're just doing here, so. And I know that it's really has been not apples to apples at all. And the entire time that I've been on the board, it's not looked the same at all for our school programs,
No, I think if anything, this is where we're not year-round school, and so the fact that we have students that, encounter year after year after year the summer slide, your summer programs are critical in keeping, kids prepared and ready for what's catching them up. Hopefully not as much catching them up, but keeping them prepared and ready for next time. So, I think it's exceptionally worthy investment.
And the last little piece, and you had a chance to read it, is our Rise Academy. We did expand that this year. It had just been for students coming out of District 105. We've expanded to include Gary Park and George Washington Middle School, so we have 212 students, which is a much bigger group than we've ever had before, which is great. But we were 212 that were identified, and then 58 came. So, and this is the mural they came up with. If you haven't seen it over by the cafeteria, this is that's one of the components of that. To get those students to feel like they belong, they are a part of a mural project, so as they walk in the door, they have something to look at. So, and this program has been in many different forms. Again, it ultimately started with the Transition Academy as a part of that humanities program. So this has shifted and changed its focus as well.
Why not invite all the students? Or why are you just selecting 3 schools?
Well, before this, it was 1, so we're.
Right. I mean, but why, if you made a transition from 1 school
Yeah.
to only 3, why not make a transition to all the kids coming into the district?
Well, prior to this year, it was only for our Latinx students. And so I don't know, Jen, if you wanted to explain a little bit about the growth of it.
Sure. I think the piece has been, which population of our students are needing a little more support. I mean, ideally, we would love to expand, and I think it's a growing program to see what we can support at this time. And so I think we've had conversations with our feeder schools, what students that we are able to bring in, so that we know that they're going to have that best transition for success in our building that might be needing that extra push or support. And so I love this year that we were able to grow and expand that, offer it to more students. We were also able to bring in other elements, which, so someone like myself got to come in and connect with students. Our college and career person who's new here, Cody, came in and he was able to introduce himself and talk to them about career planning right from the get-go. We had some of our activities that are really targeted towards that mentoring and support those sponsors came in, again, to build those relationships. Again, how are some kids coming in that might need that little extra push and support to make sure that they're being successful academically and with their social emotional skills. And so again, we were able to expand from where we were, and I hope that we can continue to grow that program. Again, it's about resources as well, staffing as well, all of those pieces.
So, but if you were saying though, in 2014, you said it was an academy for minority students, but that doesn't seem like it was a select group of minority students.
It was our Latinx students from Gurry.
But it just said minority students, so maybe, I would say maybe we should clarify that in here to say specifically who those minority students were.
And this year, we expanded it to include all students of color.
Okay,
So that,
but
yeah.
before it was just that it
It
was
did
not
start out
just all
Park Junior
minorities.
High, Latinx
Yeah, and
students.
that was when we had a Hispanic liaison, and that's the person who ran it. And so as we moved away from the liaison model and brought on an equity director instead, that's where it grew to where it is now.
So from Gurry Park, when you expanded it to the additional 3 schools, were those the schools that had the most students with minority coming in? I mean, why were those schools selected?
Yes.
Okay. So but I mean, I guess my question would be like, if you're looking at, I mean, I heard you say like busing, like how many students from from McClure do you have that would have been minority students that would have qualified? Because if you invited 212 students to participate, but only 58 participated, did you leave out 6?
I think that the reason why is how are we doing busing? How many can we support?
Got it.
And so again, we wanted to see how this will go, and hopefully we'll be able to continue and grow it. Dr. Terrell, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
The model that they use too, kids kind of rotate between different sessions per day, so 60 students works pretty well with the way that the students rotate through the different sessions and different activities. So if there were more students and we incorporated other schools, we may have to look at adding, an additional week or.
I guess my question is, how many students were not? Like, how many students were not included? Yeah, I mean, from those other schools, are we talking like?
We didn't
10?
open it up to them at that time, so again, we targeted a
I
couple
understand,
of
but like,
schools.
how many students were not? If you're looking to expand, was it 10 students or was it another?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I'd love to see that number to see what are we talking about. You would, because I would think at that point, if you had 10 students, I mean, when you look at the other schools, you might not have that many students of color coming in, and I would hate to see that you have one student there that would not be included from those, like 10 students or something like that. What is that number? Is it 60? Because that's a much different number than 10. That's what I'd love to see that number.
Yeah. And I think the best part is the success of the program. How can we grow it and say we're going to put some resources? Because again, that whole thing of just busing from that other end, that's a whole nother cost. And how what our staffing numbers are going to be, what space we're going to have. So I think that's the great part, that we're ready to see how we can grow the program.
But I'd also like to see like, how many were not included. Would be great. Thank you so much.
That's all I have for today.
That's it. It was kind of the Scott show tonight.
I know, it was Brian the last couple.
Yeah.
I have some more coming up in the future too, but
We all have our days.
I guess then with that, we can transition over to our final agenda items, the strategic plan.
Yeah.
Dr. Waterman.
So just wanted to, I always like to start with where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, with a lot of topics, but specifically with strategic planning. So just reminder, obviously, the work that a lot of people in this community did last spring to develop a strategic plan, which the board adopted in June. We've been spending a lot of time since June, really starting the process of living the plan and implementing the plan. And tonight, we really want to do three things, two of which we really haven't, we've shared a lot of updates with the board on strategic planning since February, but we've not really talked specifically about how we can ensure that the plan remains focused on equity. So that's a really significant component of tonight. Along with that, we're going to talk a little bit about the equity journey continuum, which I shared with the board back in June. Dr. Rowe is going to talk more about that, because both of those, the equity journey continuum, the Illinois School Report Card, and our KPIs within the strategic plan are really how we grounded the draft scorecard. So, but let's start with the equity component of this. So we really, again, want to make sure that we're emphasizing equitable access throughout this plan, through to the formation of a district equity leadership team. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Rowe.
Thank you. And before we started, I wanted to just, since we were talking about our RISE Academy, our amazing teacher, Ms. Zavala, who ran the program this summer, she's amazing, and she helped come up with those beautiful murals that the kids worked on, which is amazing. But last year when I came on, Scott and I had the opportunity to connect about equal opportunity schools, and that was that work of how are we helping our students to level up and move into those higher level classes. And so we jumped in, and one of the pieces with that was talking to us about creating an equity team, and so we call ours the District Equity Leadership Team, or DELT. And so we formed that, and again, we just really jumped in as a community. And the reason why Equal Opportunity Schools ask that you have that team is so that you can look at your student data, and also to begin to reach out to students to talk about how they can move into those higher level classes. And so with our work, we had different committees. All of us, Leslie and Dr. Tyrell and Scott and myself, helped to work on some projects throughout the year. And so at the end of the year, as we were doing our strategic plan work, we were like, how can we repurpose, how can we make our district equity team really work for us? So we reflected on that and really decided to say this needs to be our vehicle for us to come back from our all of our goal teams, all of our leadership, district leadership, our teacher leaders, and other representatives from the school to come in and have that opportunity to talk about our work that we're doing. And so I'm very excited that that's the direction that we're moving in. I think even tonight, all the things we were talking about is the need for time, of that learning. When you were going over everything from the calendar, and it's the same for us. Sometimes we're often so busy doing things. How is it that we have time to just really talk about equity? How are we going about this? What does that look like, process? And also for our own professional learning. Last year as well, that was very exciting for me coming into the role. We talked about how are we having our systemic professional learning for us as the leaders. How are we leading for equity? And so we started working with Dr. Tyrone Howard and the Howard Group. And that work, we decided to not just kind of cut it off like, oh, this year, these are the sessions that we're doing, but we had a greater vision to kind of move into the second year. And so our time for our district equity leadership team will be that time to work on to center equity and also on our own professional learning so that we can really truly be leaders for equity. So I just wanted to share about that quickly. So I did mention who will be on our equity team, and that will be, again, all of our leaders in the district. So that would be the central leadership team and all of our building leadership leaders. And then we'll have members, someone from B&G, some of our admin assistants, and then also some of our key teacher leaders. So we're very excited about that inclusive group. So we'll have the opportunity to meet each month for a meeting. Sometimes it'll be in the morning and sometimes it'll be in the afternoon. And this will work on our strategic plan goals. It will support that partnership with Equal Opportunity Schools. And again, we'll provide a time for that continued learning as we're working to lead through equity. Let's see. Some of the professional learning I wanted to share with you that we'll be doing. Our first meeting, however, as a team will be on the 26th. And some of the things that we'll be covering will be reviewing the strategic plan. So I know Dr. Waterman will enjoy talking to us about that and sharing again our 5 goals that we have. We've talked a lot about applying an equity lens, and so we'll kind of go over that because we want to continue to keep that centered in our work with our 3 questions that we ask. What are the actions or the policy or the decision in question? Who is centered in the discussion and who is missing? And how do we maximize opportunities and eliminate barriers? And you can see how important it is for each of those goal teams to really ask those questions every single time they're doing their work. A part of our first session, we'll review our district data and progress on the equity journey continuum, and we'll make time for those members of the action teams to meet and collaborate as they kind of assess that data that has just been shared with them. And so moving forward, our monthly meetings will provide time for us to share and collaborate and to support that systemic professional learning. One of our first experiences that we'll have will be with Dr. Howard. Really excited that he's going to be coming. We won't have to meet with him on Zoom, so he'll be here with us on the 12th. I did want to mention that we will be sharing with you all in the community that he will be with us for an evening community event. I think it'll be a great way for us to start just focusing on creating a caring community. So more about that to come. But the time we'll have with Dr. Howard, the topic will be on building a culturally responsive leadership team. Another one of the professional learning opportunities for all of us to have as a member of DELT will be with Youth Outlook, and they'll be providing the administrative training. And this session will, again, give us those updates on the Illinois State Board guidance for LGBTQ plus inclusion, those evolving curriculum laws. So that's really important for us to know about those as the leaders, so we can talk about those with our the staff that we're supporting. Our training will also talk about supporting gender diverse students. And the thing that I think can be very difficult for us as leaders is sometimes how to talk to staff and families about those policies and procedures. And then the second year with Equal Opportunity Schools, this is really their year where they focus in on professional learning for you. And so they generally suggest that we experience 3 to 4 sessions with them. And we will have a couple of them with our DELT team, but very excited that our Institute Day, we will have one on those indicators of belonging. As you know, we focus a lot on that with our work with Cobb and Crown Apple and the dignity framework and how to create that sense of belonging. So we want to, again, continue that understanding. Sometimes we want to say we've talked about something, we move on, but again, how are we coming back to these things over and over again? So on Institute Day, all of us will go through that, but one of the other trainings that the DELT team will experience will be on expectations, feedback, and assessment. And again, with this second year with EOS, this is that more intensive professional learning experiences for our team. We'll also have our District Equity Leadership Planning Committee who will support the other monthly meetings. And some examples of the work that we'll do, we'll be looking at ISBE's culturally responsive teaching and leading standards, and also the new Danielson framework. I'm super excited about it because when we're talking about culturally responsive pedagogy and equity, it's written all over the new Danielson. So the last update they had was in 2013, and it's just a world of difference for 2022. So again, we have to experience it, know about it, and decide is that something that we would use. So that will be something else we'll talk about. In our work about living the plan, we really focus on centering equity as it is truly the foundation of our work in schools today. I really wanted to say it's so important that we're not placing equity separate in a separate plan. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I started really getting into equity work, that's what you would have is generally an equity plan. One of the first things Ed and I did when we got together was we started talking about our hiring protocol and practices. So in the past, you might have an equity plan where we talk about what you're doing for hiring. That's a key part of our strategic plan, right? So it's not something that you're looking on a different page and here's your equity work. Our strategic plan is centered in equity, and all of the things that we're talking about are addressing it. So we don't have two teams, one over here doing that work and another one on this plan. So I did want to point that out. So I think it's important to say that we're able to see how all aspects of systemic planning must be created to meet the needs of all of our students in an equitable fashion via that universal plan. So a little bit about the equity journey continuum. The Illinois State Board of Education's Equity Journey Continuum is the informational tool that all districts will use to view their data through a lens of equity. It identifies gaps in student achievement, opportunities, and supports by analyzing data that districts already collect and report to ISBE. The 2022 Illinois School Report Card will include the Equity Journey Continuum, which has 3 areas. One is student learning, the second one is the learning conditions, and the third one is elevating educators. And each district's report card will display the district's step level on each of these 3 broad categories of the continuum. So some of the indicators within student learning are access to rigorous coursework, enrollment in AP classes, And I like saying that because it's not the scores, it's like how many kids are actually enrolled in the classes, which is important. SAT data and English language learners' progress towards proficiency. Some of the indicators within learning conditions are suspension data, climate survey data, and student attendance. And some indicators within elevating educators are student and teacher demographics, teacher retention data, and the overall representation of staff in comparison to the students they are serving. Each district's report card will display the district's step level on each of those 3 broad categories on the continuum. And the steps are, step 1 is having large equity gaps. So if we see a 1, we're going to want to look at that and see what that means. Step 2 is having moderate equity gaps, and step 3 is having small equity gaps, and step 4 is minimal. So as we begin to learn from our data and our placement on that continuum, it is important to note that the data that they were using for that score is going to be from the 2018-2019 school year. And it does not reflect, because I cannot say how much work we've done this past year. It's been amazing. And so that data does not reflect that. So the work we are undertaking surrounding equity is in line with the expectations of the Illinois State Board of Education. And ISB has prioritized the work of equity to ensure the success of students, educators, and schools. And the work we're doing here at LT is going to assist in continuing our strong focus on academic success while also caring for all of our students. So I'll just throw it back to you, Dr. Waterman.
Yeah, and we kind of purposely arranged this to end that part with the equity journey continuum because it's one of 3 components that our team looked at this summer to develop the draft scorecard. So I think I first shared this with the board back in the summer, but updated it because it's been evolving really since the summer. But essentially, once we had an adopted plan, our team did a retreat in mid-June and went goal by goal to determine how, looking at goal 1, for example, with student growth and achievement, the end game here is having a public scorecard that identifies the most important summative indicators that measure progress towards student growth and achievement among the, literally hundreds of metrics that are out there, right? And so we certainly had no desire to do that work arbitrarily. It was what's really important as we develop this scorecard, what other data should we ground this work in? And it really came down to 3 main components. It was the KPIs, or the key performance indicators, that were suggested by the strategic plan team, which was at the bottom on that final plan. Each goal has some suggestions that the plan team came up with, so we certainly looked at all those. The equity journey continuum that Dr. Rowe just walked through, we had that up as well, and we were looking at all the data points. So she mentioned that each school this fall is going to get a rating in one of those areas, large gaps to minimal gaps. That rating is determined by a whole host of metrics on the scorecard that she talked about, or on the journey continuum that she talked about. And then the third piece is the Illinois School Report Card issues summative designations. And again, there's a lot of metrics that go into that summative designation. So we kind of looked at all of those, and as a leadership team, discussed and debated and argued and kind of struggled through it and came up with the most recent version, is what I shared in the packet with you guys last week. But it is evolving. We actually did an exercise with our whole admin team last week to get more feedback on it. We're also in the very beginning stages. We've formed 5 action plan teams, 1 for each goal, which will consist of about 15 to 17 staff members that will also give input and help us finalize the summative indicators on our scorecard. So we're sort of in this window now where it's September 6th. We want to do a few more weeks of feedback. Each action plan team is meeting for the first time between this Friday and 2 weeks from Friday. So one of the big key tasks of the first meeting is to, again, discuss and debate the goal metrics that will be on the scorecard. So we're sort of at the final stage of developing that draft scorecard. So our goal is to get this in a really good place by late September, we're going to turn it back over to CEC, and then they'll develop a scorecard for us. So, so between the board, between the administrative team, between our action plan teams, you know, again, we've got these 5 to 7 summative indicators for each goal, and our next goal is to get feedback from the board on that, questions, and obviously we have a goal champion for each goal that put a lot of work into looking at the metrics, and so that's kind of where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going with strategic plan work.
So you are looking for board feedback on the metrics that
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
interested in, and are you looking for board feedback tonight? Are you looking for you
would say-
kind of laid out the process, but
Yeah, I would say tonight or sometime in the next couple of weeks. Like, I would never say we're ever done, right? So someone said that today, like, well, can we make adjustments after yes, of course. Like, we know that when the first version of our scorecard might look different a year from now or 2 years from now as we learn more about the metrics we're going to report on and everything. So, but we are getting down to the end here where the ones I shared with the board in this memo, feeling pretty good about the work that's gone into them, but we, at some point here within the next 3-4 weeks, we need to turn these over to CEC and they'll develop a draft. So we're still on time for, I'm thinking from a public perspective, an early November release of the scorecard. That doesn't mean every metric that we share on the website will have data attached to it, because you notice some of the metrics are related to like panorama surveys that we're just getting started with, you know, building and releasing and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's that early November timeline. We're still in line. So really, honestly, any questions or any thoughts about the metrics that we've come up with so far would be appreciated.
I have a question. When you say, I mean, there's so many to look at, but one thing that, you know, I'm looking at, I'm specifically under goal 1, under student growth and achievement. When you're saying underserved groups, I'd like to know what are you viewing as underserved groups? Maybe like,
Yeah, I'll let the goal champion for goal 1 talk about that.
oh yeah, it's like, I didn't realize that they were already assigned.
So just so you know,
I
like,
should
so
have
each of our
directed-
action
sorry.
plan teams have a goal champion assigned. Scott is goal champion for 1, Leslie is goal champion for goal 2, Ed for goal 3, obviously Dr. Rowe for the district equity team. I'm the goal champion for goal 4, and then Brian is goal 5, so.
And really remind me too, how many people are under that after the gold champion? Sorry, Jill, I don't
About
want to.
15 to 17 are on the action plan team.
Okay, and they're made up of?
All different versions of staff, different representatives from staff.
Okay.
So, and our administrators are on that team as well.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
So talk about the metrics for goal 1, Scott.
Sure. So we have a number of, one of the things we're challenged with is trying to come up with a number or a measure that's sort of a joint number, but also knowing we need data for other things in other places. So when we talk about underserved, that generally is low income, and then all of our non-white students, and that really becomes that group. There's been some debate about where students with IEPs fall, and you know, that's really, when we've reported data to the board, we've done it as low income, as Black, Hispanic, you know, the state codes for different groups. So that's where that is. What we're looking to do with this report card is to come up with a more combined number. And it's not so much reporting out about each individual group, but about the gap between that group and the white student group that's not low income.
As a grouping, all the underserved together.
Correct.
Could there be something in here with an asterisk or a footnote or something with, you're referring to as underserved? That
Yeah,
might be-
we're working on
I
these
know it's just a work in
definitions,
progress.
and no, and I've even looked at a couple of these. I'm like, that's not what we're doing now, because what does that number mean if it's not in relation to something else? And so we're actually, Christine Seaman is our new coordinator of assessment and research, and she and I have talked a lot about, would it be the difference between where this group is and where this group is as the number, as opposed to 63. Well, what does 63 mean? You need to know what the other number is. Maybe the difference, that'll show you the gap, right? So there's a lot of experimentation in this group that I'm chairing as the champion. We'll be talking about what do you think is going to be a useful measure. But ultimately, we want to make sure that we're looking at these groups and, like you said, making it clear who we're talking about.
I mean, and.
The descriptions on this are going to be really important. And we've
Oh,
looked
that's
at other district scorecards. That was the other thing we looked at in June when we were starting to develop these, look to see what other districts do. And that description is important because it is one number, right? So it's one number, and then it talks, and then you're demonstrating whether you've met that or you're approaching it. But then how you're describing that to make it easily understood is important.
And I worry that when you lump all the underserved students together into one group, are you really getting an accurate picture based upon some of the things that we've seen previously?
Sure.
Because you have a difference from, the African-American student to, like there's 4 different categories that
Right.
you're looking
And
at.
students are in multiple
Correct.
categories. So the thing I keep coming back to is because Christine and I have talked a lot about this, and she's talked with all the champions too. The point of the scorecard is a little different than the data we need to make the decisions in our everyday programmatic lives. So to some degree, this is this is a shorthand. This is a letter grade as opposed to the grade book. And so we need the grade book to do a lot of other things. That's that detail with how are our African-American students, our Latinx students, how are they doing specifically and in different levels and in different courses and in different years. That's never going to show up on this.
Right, but you
What
could
we're
have
creating
one group
is a
skew it,
big
is my
conglomeration.
You could have one group skew it if you have, like specifically, if you're looking like at math, if you look at it based upon the past, what you have with specifically looking at the achievement gap, there is a wide variety between like the Latinx student and the African American students, and you're going to skew that data if you combine them all together, is my concern.
And I would agree with you. The only caveat to that is in the state of Illinois plan, which a lot of this data comes from, their goal is, I believe by 2043, is for every student to be 100% meeting all goals in all areas. So they're having groups who are at the lowest now growing faster than other students. So that to get to that kind of a goal, you have to look at both. It's the individual and the complete. But we all technically have to be at 100% meeting state standards on the SAT. I think it's by 2043.
But that's like 20 years from now.
Yes.
So a lot of.
And every time they come out with these lists, they keep pushing the
Right, but I mean,
date back.
I don't want to lose sight of.
No,
like,
yeah,
that breakdown.
I think too,
within
Joe,
I agree.
yeah. I was gonna say, I think too, the one of the things we really talked about, and this gets back to what Dr. Rowe was saying, like, we wanted to make sure that each of the, each goal has a metric in there that's related to opportunity gap or equity.
Okay.
And so how can we represent, without having 20 different metrics for goal 1, how can we represent that opportunity gap in a way with one number?
And I would just say, I mean, I understand and appreciate that, but as a board, I think it's important that at some point we're going to need to break that down
Yes.
to see that. I mean, we just can't look at the big picture of that.
Right.
Yep.
Because you could have that be, you could have one population be here, another population be here, but then together they're above it. And that would be my concern.
Correct. And we're looking at end of year from the previous year data. So we're talking about students that are no longer here as well. So that
Right.
junior class from the year before was different than the junior class from the so we just sort of assume that there's a correlation, right? And so there's challenges to having these sort of lagging, the technical term, the lagging indicator, something that has already happened, as opposed to other things that we want to build into the process where we're measuring along the way, so that they're check-in, so that how are those kids from that RISE summer program doing? That'll never be a part of a scorecard, but that's something we're going to want to check up on. That's something we're going to want to track as we go through different things. So
But it is, but that, all of those leading formative indicators are really important that lead to the summative indicator. So
Yeah.
that's,
But
this
I just
doesn't
want to make sure we
change.
don't lose sight of
No,
that
absolutely
along
not.
the way, that this doesn't replace that, and that we can still break that down, because I think that was really, for us as a whole board, I think that was striking to see the difference between the different groups.
Yep.
And I just fear that when you're just lumping everybody into underserved,
Yeah, for
we're
sure.
gonna lose sight of that.
Yep.
And I think that's the piece that we're doing, that's all the work in each of those goal teams that we are breaking it down. So I mean, this is just again, like a smaller snapshot of the work, but then there's plans under each of those things that's not going to be represented on that scorecard. And we'll be sharing about that, but, so I just think that's important to note, because we are going to be drilling down. We want to know how our African American, our Latinx, or our other groups are doing in those key areas. That's very important.
Right, and as long as when that's presented, we see that too, would be my ask.
Yes.
Okay.
I hear everyone saying the purpose of the scorecard is to kind of give one, almost like a single aggregate answer, knowing that it's made up of parts. And, the worst thing that could happen, I think, would be to have that aggregate answer be misleading because something's really great and something's really terrible, and it averages out to neutral, and so it doesn't get our
Doesn't
attention.
look
But
like it, yeah.
I'm hearing that, that will not happen.
Right.
I'm picturing and, popping open that one score into all these disaggregated categories. But for the purposes of I don't want to call it a one-pager, but a scorecard can't get into the weeds on the surface, or you lose the audience. So am I close to what you're trying to?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
absolutely.
Okay, I get it.
It also doesn't change the, this is obviously a public-facing scorecard to measure progress towards our strategic plan, but it doesn't change the different data that we share and the presentations that we share with the board on an annual basis either. So we'll still continue to share that too.
One of the initiatives that was discussed here, probably not quite this time last year, but a little bit into the fall, were those gathering of the student insights, like the individual cards to identify their sense of belonging. Do they have a touch point with everybody else? And I just want to confirm, obviously that's in the weeds and private, but you're following all of those paths, but it looks like some of that is included in these goals as well. So taking all of that data, and that's in addition to scores and your more traditional metrics, you're looking at the data from that exercise. Wonderful.
Yeah, they gave us a board-ready PowerPoint to share.
I'm so
But
excited.
it's not always necessarily what we're working on, it's what they want you to know about their company. So it's very lovely, and there's some really good information in there, but it will, like you said, it's embedded in a lot of these other things too.
Okay.
But that's how we led the 98 students in juniors and seniors in AP classes that were identified through that, so that we invited. So, and we've seen that gap shrink, and that's the number that you'll see is the shrinking gap. But all that stuff behind it is surveying every kid and every teacher and having those meetings and bringing kids in and having level up lunches and talking with counselors and getting insight cards out to teachers and to counselors. And so there's so many pieces to all these different components that, ultimately it boils up into one number, but you can't move that number without all the other.
Well, but that's also to your earlier point about those lagging indicators too. And I remember a few different conversations, and I remember, Michael, you bringing this up, like we can't wait for all of the numbers to get some of the work done, but that's what you're doing and having those move in tandem. And so it's nice to see it all come together.
So,
You go ahead, Michael.
So just coming out of the strategic planning team, I know that one of the things that the group discussed and that Perry talked about for ninth grade on track was the percentage of students who've completed algebra before they get to high school, and that was very important indicator. And I know that some of that is beyond our control, but if that is an important indicator, it should be something that we should be noting somewhere and communicating to the associate schools.
Yep. That's, so that would actually probably be included more through Goal 4, which one of the strategies of Goal 4 is associate school articulation. We're actually hosting an event tomorrow with all the district leadership teams from our associate schools, or they'll be on campus, but that's a communication thing where absolutely that we'll unpack what that ninth grade on track metric really means in terms of all the different courses and how we track that. But yes, that's a communication piece with with our associate schools.
The ninth grade on track that's on the school report card has to do whether or not you're passing your classes and moving.
Once you're here.
Once you're here. And that's the number that we have here, but again, that is also an important thing to note, is who's on track academically when they walk in the door, right? So that's a part of those articulations, not only just algebra, but also reading. We're expanding our MAP testing this year, because again, with humanities not being filled, we're putting everyone in the prep level is giving the MAP in English and in math. So that gives us more data as well to see where kids are when they walk in the door and what kind of growth is attained. So again, those all are sort of the subsets of that number, because that should all lead toward more students passing if they're coming in more prepared, and the more we can do to articulate that better, or provide maybe a summer bridge, all those, we start being able to have the conversation.
Do we get, to your point, so just to make sure I heard you properly, we're going to do MAP testing fall and spring, or just fall?
We've been doing MAP testing throughout, but with smaller populations, but with our prep level, it'll be fall and winter and spring. We'll do all three.
For all freshman students at the prep
For all
level?
freshman prep level, English and world history.
And do we get that?
And math, algebra.
Do the feeder districts, do all the feeder districts do MAP?
No.
In 7th and 8th grade?
Well, Pleasantdale might have switched.
Do
Sure enough to ask.
They were using a different one for a while. I'm not sure if they've switched or not. The pandemic screwed everybody's maps up.
Yeah. Do they share that data with us on incoming freshmen?
We do for when we have placement discussions.
Okay, because it seems like such a missed opportunity if they don't share it with us.
Colin Voigt and Karen Reno meet with each of the schools and talk
Yeah.
about that for placement.
Well, and especially if we're going to start doing it for all freshmen here, to be able to look at their 8th grade fall to fall, I mean, that seems like a great opportunity if they're doing that that should travel along with the students. Michael, did you have more? I don't want to jump in on you. So I was kind of curious about the 9th grade on track and the graduation rate and some of the stuff that is tracked on the Illinois interactive report card anyway. So that, just to use the example of the 9th grade on track, especially looking at some of the numbers of the
Edgenuity.
I cannot get that.
Ingenuity with
Ingenuity,
edge.
edgenuity. Okay, but why is, just for that one, why is 9th grade the preferred focus? Why are we not, I mean, because I could see scenarios where we have our 9th graders on track, and that's showing positive. But frankly, I want to know as they move, how we're tracking as kids are moving through our system. I want to see that percentage is ideally growing and certainly not diminishing. So and especially since the Illinois report card tracks it, why are we putting it out there as one of our metrics? When we can get that here, why not look at something that is a little more potentially powerful to the end game, which is to graduate?
And to Michael's point too, this came up a lot in our strategic planning sessions in the spring, the research around the predictive value of 9th grade on track.
Yeah.
Like that predicts future success. So I don't know, Scott, if you want to add any more to that, but.
We've talked about it a lot at the, like Brian has his circle of folks. I have the group of CADCA folks for the curriculum directors, and we have a little quibble with this one anyway. And for example, if a student fails first semester and then makes up through Edgenuity, they still are considered not on track, even though we got them back on track. So this past year, and I'll let you take the credit or give the data, with our freshman team, and Adam Davis was working with them, he worked his tail off to get those kids on track. So at the end of the year, we had how many that were off track?
I believe we had 10 that started their sophomore year off track. Now, that doesn't align to the state data. The 10 is students who weren't able to get to the 5.0 credits going into their sophomore year, or failed more than one semester without recovering it of a core course. That's huge.
But our report card data will show it was a larger number.
Right.
Even though we captured those back.
Yeah, so that's great, A, that is huge. But B, it just seems to me, even just hearing you say that, it still continues to be more critical that we understand as the kids are moving through all 4 years here at LT, that the metric should center around.
Like almost adding another data point for, at the end of each year,
I mean-
tracking the trend data from 9th grade to 10th grade to 11th grade.
Yeah. And that, and actually, and to your point about trend data, some of the other comments as I went back and revisited the actual wording of the goal, provide a comprehensive, innovative education for every student to ensure all students grow and achieve. And then some of the subpoints, deliver guaranteed, viable, and rigorous curriculum for all students. So some of the questions that I'm asking about the 9th grade, I have questions in, some of the other points, and I'll throw out one of them. The fact that plan's not showing up on here was kind of a, why aren't we looking at the progression of students? Because that actually gives us trend data of students as they move through LT, so that was a question of mine. But also, how did we get to the 540 in evidence-based reading and writing and a 540 in evidence-based math? When I think back to the presentation that we had last October and looking at the numbers of, and I'm pretty sure I recall that that's what the college readiness was saying. But to me, for LT, that's not what I want to hang my hat on. That seems to me like a low expectation. And if we're really trying to offer a guaranteed, viable, and rigorous curriculum for all students, I think the metrics that we have to be assessing that have to be rigorous as well. So when I look through, several of these, those are the questions that are flowing through my mind. And like, I'm not saying that that's not important to know that, but to the point where we're disaggregating the data, we're going to be looking at that anyway. But are these high expectation metrics? Like, something about coursework in here. I lost the one, advanced credit. There's something about a minimum GPA or something. But, why are we not looking at the percent of grades of students that are getting, C's or better, and having a baseline and understand if that's what we're striving for is, not just to have students accomplish the D, and I understand in many cases that is a huge accomplishment, but where's our high expectation? And to me, that I just feel like all of these need some further review with that lens as well.
Yeah, that's why you said we have some time to provide some of
That's
that other
great feedback to
additional
have.
input.
Yeah.
We can do that. To address those concerns. All righty.
And obviously, as you guys have other questions or other thoughts on this, but again, we're hoping to come back here in about a month, probably, with a draft card for the board, and then 2 months for the public.
I'm looking forward to seeing how this comes together, and really appreciate all the teams working really hard, because I know that's a lot of extra work too, but I know that this is like really pivotal as like a launch pad, and for really where this takes us, and then to your point, how we evolve it. And it will have to evolve, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's gonna have to adjust, and, we're gonna find out that what maybe we thought was gonna be a good benchmark isn't really reliable, or isn't accurate, and isn't working for us, so we need to find some other ways to get to that data and that information. So, but it's great because we're putting this information out for everybody to see and to access pretty quickly and in a very visual way. And I think for me, that's gonna be really helpful, because I appreciate all that being able to see something so visible and on our website no less. So
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, we're continuing to update the strategic plan website, so that's, that'll evolve too. And we'll continue, like, as our action plan teams meet, we will update the agendas and the minutes from those meetings as well, so.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I know you said you would address the associate schools in Goal 4, but I don't see anything about associate schools here.
Yeah, it's the third strategy of Goal 4, so promoting high school readiness by fostering communication and collaboration with associate
Wait,
districts.
where am I at?
So you're looking
Am I
at.
on a different page?
No, you're looking at the metrics for Goal 4. So one of the strategies within Goal 4 is working with associate schools. So that action plan team will actually develop plans for doing what you're talking about.
It's just
Right, so
another
will we have a
experience.
metric?
So yeah,
for
so we'll have to add a metric for that.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I saw that on there. What you just said, the associate schools. I don't know why I thought I saw
No,
Not
there's,
on the
so
metrics.
for Goal 4, we have a couple metrics, and I think we have work to do on this. We have a couple metrics related to communication with the community. Participation rates among emails and things, and, board briefs and stuff like that. We also need to develop some, career work experiences and career internship metrics as well, because that's second strategy. And then trying to measure collaboration with the associate schools is something we have to, that's going to be a challenge, but we'll have to figure out how to add a metric that measures the successfulness of our collaboration with the associate schools, with 6 different associate schools. So whether that's through satisfaction surveys or something, that will be the goal of the action plan team, to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, because I also am concerned about, also too, just like, I know this is within the associate schools, but it affects them with the LT, like the importance of a foreign language as well. Because in some associate schools, there's a de-emphasis on, with a number of students in not taking a foreign language, but then the parent groups don't understand the consequences of them not taking the foreign language in 7th and 8th grade by the time that they get to, and how it impacts their schedule even more. Because students who are even taking it in 7th and 8th grade, their schedule is already jam-packed in the freshman year, so it's only like one elective that they're able to take. But by a student who hadn't taken it and then, oops, I want to, like, I just think that there just needs to be, from the rigor perspective, like, there needs to be more communication out from Lyons Township High School to the associate schools, so that also then, you can't control how it does or does not get to the parents, but
Sharing
that
that information.
there's a stronger base of communication on that as well. So those are 2 important areas that affect the schedule and affect the pathways of students coming into Lyons Township High School and leaving.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Did you say you have you have a call with your associate schools
No,
too? Or
tomorrow we're hosting an event, so all the district leadership teams from our 6 associate schools will be on campus, at South Campus, and we're going to share our plan with them.
Yeah,
So we'll
that's great.
Good, that's really
I think we got about 40 administrators coming, so, from the different schools.
good.
And Michael, I concur with you 100%, and, I know many of the feeder districts have their own committees, and we have articulation committees between LT and the feeder districts, but if there's other committees that we can have a member from LT to be part of that committee, so that we have a better sense of where we can partner with the work. I don't know, but I feel like we have to lead the way in that collaboration and in the efforts, and in, coming to them with partnership and collaboration ideas that are out of the box and forward thinking. And to that point, I actually thank you for bringing this, because Dr. Howard, I wanted to bring up something you said that we were going to, or Dr. Rowe. I'm thinking about Dr. Howard, or Tyrone Howard, right, Dr. Howard? You mentioned a community event that you're going to be posting soon, and I had to look up the event that we did back in March, talking to students about eliminating hate, and it was so powerful and so illuminating. And I know myself, when I was looking, there, it was a Zoom meeting, I was wishing that we had promoted it to all the feeder districts and touted it as a community-wide event. And
So what we've done, so get work with Scott, so we actually have with all of our feeder districts, we have a curriculum and equity committee, so those things, like we've already shared it. So that's new this year, so we met at the end of the year last year, and that's something that they decided would be very helpful. So those are the things, and we're even working on a collaborative newsletter where we're pulling all of our important dates, because one of the things we did last year was shared with our community outreach. For example, with ministerium, so all of the things that we thought were significant here, so that, if your faith-based leader was sharing that, they might be like, oh, parent-teacher conference, it's different than just an email from the school that might work for someone. So now we're trying to build it with those feeder schools. So that was a goal of increasing that collaboration. So we're doing collaborative book studies together and sharing those events. So that is for sure, and that they will be personally invited. We're also working on when we're talking about our hiring, for example, and retention, with our affinity space, we're working with LADSI also, and our feeder schools and our teachers of color here at LT. So that has been building those relationships a big focus. So yes, we want them there.
Absolutely, and specific, when you say sharing the events, not just with the the collaborative teams that you
The
formed.
whole school, so
but the whole
community.
schools.
It's a
Yeah, the
community
whole
event.
community. Then that event with Dr. Howard is going to be an in-person event?
This one will be in person,
Okay.
and and we'll continue to try to get that feedback, because I think it's great to have both, sometimes in person, and we've talked about the Zoom eliminates a lot of barriers for people, but he was going to be in the area, so we thought it would be a great opportunity to have a face-to-face with him.
That's great, and I'm glad, I really hope that the feeder districts will really push that invite
Yes.
out to their
I hope so,
entire
too.
school communities. And we see a big presence, I think about like the power of Parent University in this community over the years.
Yes.
And it's kind of waned in the last few years. And so
Yeah.
I think us working together to lead the way in that and bring our whole wide community together is super important.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody. For all the updates. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for staying tonight. Appreciate having you here in the audience. Thank you. I'm glad I have my Starbucks this afternoon. So, I'm sorry?
Make sure you ask if you're going.
Do we have any non-agenda related comments tonight? Okay, good. Concludes, I guess that concludes our meeting for the evening. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.